Thank you. Do we have, we just came out of closed session. Do we have closed session report?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Tammy Wirtz, would you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Litster,
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos,
Here.
Councilmember Judge,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh,
Here.
Mayor Mashburn.
Here. Everybody have an opportunity to review the agenda and any comments, suggestions, changes? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Mr. Mayor, I will note that we have a supplemental for agenda item 4A, our public hearing tonight.
Okay.
And I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Does anybody have a declaration of conflict with anything on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, move forward.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the first item on the agenda is 1D1, a presentation of certificates of commendation to Simi Valley Police Officer Jane Collado, Officer James Quillis, Communications Supervisor Stacy Miller, and Police Dispatcher Shannon Johnson for saving the lives of overdose victims after administering naloxone. And Chief Livingstone is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Tonight, we are recognizing Officers Gene Collado and James Keelis, Communications Supervisor Stacy Miller, and Police Dispatcher Shannon Johnson for their roles in saving 3 overdose victims in 4 weeks. Gene, James, Stacy, and Shannon, would you please join us here at the front of the council chambers? On September 3rd, 2019, at approximately 7:03 a.m., Officer Collado responded to a call of a subject not breathing. Based on his assessment of the symptoms, Officer Collado believed the subject was suffering from an opioid overdose. He promptly administered Naxalone, and the subject began breathing again. On September 20th, 2019, at approximately midnight, Officer Keelis was dispatched to the report of an overdose victim. Communications Supervisor Stacy Miller and Police Dispatcher Shannon Johnson were able to obtain information that it was possibly an opioid overdose and relay that information to Officer Keelis. He arrived on the scene and determined the subject was in fact suffering from an opioid overdose. He administered 2 doses of Naxalone, and moments later the subject came to and sat up. On September 25th, 2019, at approximately 12:30 p.m. in the afternoon, officers responded to the report of a male subject overdosing in a truck. Officer Collado arrived and administered 2 doses of Naxalone, at which point the subject opened his eyes and began breathing. This subject was a family member of Officer Collado. The Simi Valley Police Department has been deploying Naxalone kits in every patrol vehicle since April of 2018. Naxalone is a medication that reverses and blocks the effects of opioid overdose. It is administered through the nasal passages and is similar to that of a nasal spray, and it only reverses the effects of opioids such as heroin, morphine, methadone, OxyContin, hydrocodone, and fentanyl. It does not revise the effects of any other drugs. Tonight, the City Council is recognizing these officers and dispatchers for their performance and their commitment to serving the citizens of Simi Valley. Please join me in congratulating Officers Collado, Officers Keelis, Communications Supervisor Miller, and Police Dispatcher Johnson.
You know, know, there was a time not too long ago when if someone had overdosed, they would definitely have to wait for the fire department to get there or the ambulance to get there to help them. And being progressive, as this department is, now all of our police officers are carrying first aid, AEDs, and drugs to help somebody that's in an overdose situation. And because they're out moving around the community so much, they're getting to these calls much faster and sooner than the fire department. So that's a great thing for our community. And now we're able to celebrate the success of doing just that. So big hand to you folks. Yeah. Apparently we're always struck with everybody holding on peace. So you're ready for I think Gene has to say something. I was just at a major event where he spoke, and he was better than the paid movie stars that came in and spoke. This guy is awesome.
I also dance too, so you can probably get that going on. First and foremost, I want to thank the City Council for all of this. This is absolutely phenomenal what we have. To be able to have the medication in our cars to do this, it's phenomenal. Chief as well. This was something that a lot of departments in this county don't do. I think we were the second ones that within the county that picked up on it. EMS agency was great with being able to provide us with all these things and the training. We have a nonprofit, Project Safer, that was able to give us these kits, so there was no cost to the city, no cost to the department, and if it wasn't for the chief giving us the opportunity to do it, make policies in place, we wouldn't have it. So I want to thank the chief as well as the city council as well. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is 1D2, a presentation of certificates of appreciation to outgoing Neighborhood Council Executive Board members, and Emily Habib is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Tonight, the City Council is recognizing 18 Neighborhood Council Executive Board members who have successfully completed their 2-year terms of office. During their terms, these Executive Board members became familiar with a number of city programs, including the Police Department's Community Emergency Response Training, as well as city divisions, including traffic engineering, code enforcement, and water conservation. They also had presentations from the Samaritan Center, the Simi Valley Community Garden, the Clean Power Alliance, and Little Free Libraries. They toured the city's sanitation plant, transit facility, and cultural arts center. The board members forwarded 15 recommendations on applications and policy items to the Planning Commission and the City Council, including possible revisions to off-street vehicle parking regulations, construction of 2 4-story buildings on First Street by Public Storage, the redevelopment of the Farmers Insurance and Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District sites, a BMX track, the city's first single-room occupancy development, senior townhomes for sale at Walnut Avenue and Lemon Drive, and an assisted living facility at the east end of Cochran Street. These executive board members have also represented the neighborhood councils on the Special Events Support Review Committee, the Citizen Election Advisory Commission Selection Board, the Community Projects Grant Committee, the Youth Employment Services Advisory Board, the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee. Some of the outgoing neighborhood council members are present tonight. It's going to be a little bit of a light turnout, what with blackouts and fires. But I'm going to go ahead and read the names even if they are not here. As I do read your name, please come forward to receive a well-deserved certificate of appreciation for your contribution of time and leadership to the community. Neighborhood Council 1, Sean Brooks, Eve Liebman, and Sally Miller. Neighborhood Council 2, Christopher Connell, Dawn Gray, Andy Hanna, Deborah Lovelace, Judy Mayer, and TJ McInturf. So that's Judy coming, and there's TJ. Neighborhood Council 3, Ian Davis, Amin Magsudi, Janie Trice, and Jim Woods. All right. And that is Jim Woods coming up. Neighborhood Council 4, Hal Bloom, Gloria Bowman, Cindy Cole, Lisa Morrison, and Ana Posadas, and that would be Gloria.
All right, photo op. All right, see, they know, they've got the certificates up in front. But once again, you know, we're very proud of everybody that serves on the neighborhood councils and all the work they do. Many of you are continuing on time and time again, or stay off for a term and then return, and the city appreciates that. And I can tell you that the council reads your reports. And well, he's not a council member anymore. There's one mayor that also sometimes looks at your questions and goes, that's a good question, I'm going to use that. But I never plagiarize, but I do borrow some of the questions because you folks ask great questions and we very much appreciate it. So thank you very much for your service. Anybody want to say?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is 3.1, adoption of a resolution ratifying the reappointment of a commissioner to the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura Board of Commissioners. And Eric Chen is here for this presentation. There are no cards for item 2. Excuse me, I'm going to skip back to agenda item 2, public statements on appointments and certain committee informational reports. And there are no speaker cards submitted for that item. The resolution for item 3.1 is as follows. Resolution number 2019-43, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley ratifying the reappointment of Margaret Noble as Commissioner to the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura Board of Commissioners.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of City Council. The Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura represents 7 jurisdictions in Ventura County, including Simi Valley. It is governed by a Board of Commissioners appointed by the jurisdictions it serves. Currently, one of the city's 2 commissioner positions is up for reappointment at the City Council discretion. The Area Housing Authority has requested the city to reappoint the incumbent, Commissioner Margaret Noble, extending her service term to December 10th, 2023, as her current term is set to expire on December 10th, 2019, or begin recruitment for a new commissioner. Margaret, I believe, is unavailable to join us tonight. Nevertheless, she has indicated her continued interest to serve the city on the Area Housing Authority Board. Therefore, it is recommended that the City Council approve and the mayor reappoint Commissioner Margaret Noble to the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura Board of Commissioners for a 4-year term commencing December 11, 2019.
Is Margaret here?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so it's automatic that she's going to get it because she's not here to defend herself.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt a resolution ratifying the reappointment of Margaret Noble as a commissioner representing Simi Valley on the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura Board of Commissioners for a term of 4 years, commencing on December 11th, 2019, and concluding on December 10th, 2023.
Second?
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is 3.2, appointment of Neighborhood Council Executive Board members to the 4 neighborhood councils, and Emily Habib is here for this presentation.
Once again, good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Since 1970, the neighborhood councils have served as an important component in the city government structure. They promote citizen awareness and participation in local government. They advise the City Council and Planning Commission on development projects and citizen concerns. Effective October 31st, 2019, 20 positions on the executive boards of the 4 neighborhood councils will be vacant. On September 18th, 2019, council members Judge and Litster interviewed eligible applicants and nominated 11 for appointment. On October 1st, 2019, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh and Councilmember Luevanos also conducted interviews of eligible applicants and nominated 9 for appointment. These 20 applicants are being nominated to serve 2-year terms of office beginning November 1st, 2019. Some of the nominees are present this evening. As I read your name, please come forward and remain until all names have been called. Okay. All right, Neighborhood Council 1. Sophia Bagdasarian, Sherry Bowles-Gibbons, Joseph A. Gokin, Gary King. Neighborhood Council 2. Rebecca Miller, Jayesh Patel, Jeff Pollock, Michelle Serber, Leah Williams, and Stephen Wolvek. Neighborhood Council 3, Pepper Arvold, Rick Norris, Carol Sue Thomayer, John Weber, and Roberta Woods. Neighborhood Council 4, Atif Akbar, Ken Dickerson, Peggy Hanesian, Richard Moore, and Victoria Wright. It is recommended that the City Council approve and the mayor appoint these 20 applicants nominated by the interview subcommittees to the executive boards of the neighborhood councils.
I move to approve and the mayor appoint the 20 applicants nominated to serve on the executive boards of the 4 neighborhood councils for a term commencing on November 1st, 2019 and expiring on October 31st, 2021.
Second.
Call for the vote. No discussion? I would just like to remind, based on what happened at our last city council meeting, that we will be looking at social media comments. They will be viewed by city council. So please be wary of what you post online because you are a representation of this city.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry, one more comment. I believe Brian Gabler said that everyone's going to sign the code of ethics who has been appointed, or have they already?
We, as if you're a member, if you're appointed by the city council to a board, commission, or committee, the code of ethics require these members to be signed. So we would be distributing them to the new appointees.
Okay. And they will all sign the code of ethics?
They will be presented to them to sign. Yes.
Okay. And should they?
Anybody here that would not like to sign the code of ethics? I know you haven't seen them.
well, you want my firstborn to be happy.
The thing is we all sign in on the council, and it's a standard for every Washington. And you will be asked to sign. If anybody at this time protests,
I just want to remind those who are appointed, I do thank you for stepping forward and donating your time, but just want to remind you that you are a representation of everyone that is up here on the city council and of the city online, in person, and that, you know, we expect you to present the best of the city.
Okay, call for the vote.
Motion passes with Councilmember Luevanos abstaining.
Then I think the next step is I have to officially appoint, correct? Because now the vote directs that I appoint, and I hereby appoint and congratulate each of you. Now, if anybody wants my time, arrange that too. But we do thank you for your service, and hopefully you'll find it rewarding, and we look forward to working with you. It's an important, and the importance you put on it for almost to the council level, and on your work on there, and as well as planning commission. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is item 4, public hearings. Let the record show that due notice was given as required by law, and an affidavit to this effect is on file in the office of the city clerk. The reports of the city staff relating to these matters shall be made a part of the record of this meeting. Speakers during public hearings shall limit their comments to matters relevant to the item on the agenda, and may be ruled out of order if comments are unrelated to the item. If you challenge in court any of the City Council decisions made here tonight, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing. The time within which judicial review must be sought is governed by California Code of Civic Procedure, Section 1094.6. Agenda item 4A is a public hearing to approve the 2019 Sanitation Rate Study and Engineers Report, adopt the 2019 Sewer System Reliability Assessment and Financial Plan Update, make findings pursuant to Proposition 218, introduction of an ordinance establishing sanitation service rates and fees, and repealing ordinance number 1239. Mr. Mayor, you may begin.
Okay, this is the time and place set for a public hearing on the consideration of a proposed ordinance establishing sanitation fees and charges and repealing ordinance number 1239. May we have a reading of the proposed ordinance?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 4A, the first reading for ordinance number 1300, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley establishing a schedule of sanitation fees and charges and repealing ordinance number 1239.
Okay, may we have an oral report on this matter from staff? Mr. Joe Deacon, or no, Mr. Ron Fujiwaki,
We're going to tag team here.
or both of you.
Yeah, okay. Mayor Mashburn and council members, this evening, as indicated, the staff is requesting the City Council consider adopting sanitation service rates and fees for the next 5 fiscal years, FY 2020-21 through FY 2024-25. On August 26th, the City Council authorized staff to proceed with the Proposition 218 process and set a public hearing for this evening to consider new sanitation rates and fees.
In developing the proposed fees, staff analyzed current and future revenues and expenditures to provide sewer services to the community and identified the nexus between the proposed fees and the cost to provide this service. 2 key studies were prepared, including the 2019 Sewer System Reliability Assessment and Financial Plan Update and the 2019 Sanitation Rate Study. The draft sanitation rate study clearly shows a nexus between the cost to provide the sanitation services and the proposed fees to cover the costs as required for fee increases. And now Joe Deacon is here to discuss more details of the fee increases.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm just going to run through some material that is a bit of a refresher. You may have seen this before, but just to give you a little bit of background and reground ourselves on why we're here. Sanitation services. Sanitation is an enterprise. It is funded by the fees collected for the services provided. There are no taxes used to provide the sanitation services. Our current fiscal year budget for the sanitation includes a $2.4 million deficit. Not a big emergency. We have plenty of reserves right now, but looking into the near term, the medium term, if you will, the next 5 years, and looking at maintaining a $17.5 million reserve, which we consider a prudent reserve that would provide 180 days of operating funds and 1 year of CIP funds equals $17.5 million. So we ran some models to look at where we would be if we maintain the rate as it were. And again, we've shown the City Council this chart before. But if we were to maintain rates flat, as shown by the purple line in this chart, with the gold bars representing capital expenses for the next 5 years, and the blue bars representing operating expenses for the next 5 years, of course, projected. The red line represents what our fund balance would look like. And in year 2024, we would actually be in a negative fund balance. So in order to rectify this potential for a negative fund balance, we are proposing to raise sanitation rates. And this is what would happen if the City Council were to adopt the rates as proposed and as put out in the notice. The revised purple line now shows the rate increases every year for all customers served sanitation services. The gold bars and blue bars remain the same as in the previous chart, the projected expenses for the next 5 years. And the red line now is rectified, showing the fund balance that would remain after 5 years, and we hit that target of $17.5 million in 2025. Want to talk about one of the major expenses, capital improvement program. It is a subject also of a supplemental item that was added to the staff report. We have proposed 37 projects over the next 5 years, and those fiscal years are 2021, which starts next fiscal year, through 24-25. Those are 5 fiscal years. Those 37 projects include 13 sewer line rehabilitation projects, no new sewer lines. This is just repairing existing sewer lines to make sure they maintain their integrity and are leak-proof and reliable for the community's use. And 18 water quality control plant projects, the water quality control plant being the centralized location where all the wastewater is treated before it is discharged to the Arroyo Simi. And similar to the sewer line projects, these 18 projects are all replacement and rehabilitation projects. As we replace some equipment, of course, we get slightly better equipment in some cases, but the aim is not for improvement. Our aim is simply to keep up with time. We have components wearing out, and we need to replace them. And 6 system enhancements. This includes our overall computer operating system and some studies that we need to do in order to keep pace with the requirements of regulatory and reporting to the council. Our total of all these projects over the next 5 fiscal years is $41 million. We talked about a couple months ago that we would conduct public outreach. I want to assure the City Council we have conducted the outreach that we had discussed. We provided notice on the city website, notice on Simi Valley Television. We visited neighborhood councils, the Council on Aging, the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee, and the city's Budget Advisory Committee. We conducted a special public meeting that was advertised in the newspaper on October 16th here in the community room, and we provided notice by mail to all property owners served sanitation services. We are following the Prop 218 process, which again we briefed you on a couple months ago before we mailed out the notices. We mailed out approximately 38,000 notices to all the property owners served sanitation services. And if a majority of those parcel owners do not protest, the council has discretion to act on the proposed rate increase. One of the requirements, as Ron touched on as well, is that we must provide a report that has a nexus or a connection between the cost to provide a service and the expense that a customer must pay. And we are a nonprofit. There's no other money in there except the cost to provide services. That's all the fees pay for. We provided that report. We provided a draft report. We posted it online. And we are, again, presenting it to the City Council tonight for your approval. Up until today's mail was collected, we had received 1,761 protests by mail. We have received physically 9 more protests here tonight at the public hearing, making that total 1,770. Putting an extra zero in there, sorry. 1,770 protests have been received so far. We are conducting the public hearing now. Protests may also be delivered orally in accordance with Prop 218. But the council may adopt a rate if less than a majority protest, and that majority is approximately 19,000. And we are apparently so far from reaching a majority that I don't know that we need to provide you an exact count tonight. It does not appear that you will need to make that discussion that is there a majority that has protested. Clearly a majority has not protested. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Questions of staff from the council?
Do you want me to go first, or okay, tell me about the meeting that you held this past week on the 16th, I believe it was. What were, there was some questioning, I believe, about, well, maybe you can tell me about that meeting and what were some of the concerns that were raised by citizens at that meeting?
The meeting was held on October 16th, community room. 6 members of the public showed up. There were a couple of questions with regards to the unfunded pension liability for sanitation employees.
And would you explain that, the answer? I mean, I understand that of this, there's 11 million, is it, that is budgeted for unfunded pension liabilities, correct? In this report?
It's not budgeted. What they did in terms of the...
Or used as a...
In terms of developing the new freeze and using our calculations is that they showed the $11.5 million as a liability. In other words, they took it out of the overall fund, or just
overall general fund, and just attributed it to
sanitation. They showed it as a liability so that, you know, in the future we wouldn't be digging into the liability because we knew we had this unfunded pension liability, CalPERS pension liability that we had to pay. So that was not included when the consultant was developing the rates.
So, but you're saying the 11.5 was part of the assumptions to come up with the necessary funds.
I don't know if it was
accurate?
assumption, it was a factor that.
It was a factor, I'm sorry, not assumption, but that was used as one of the factors to come
Yeah,
up with.
they did not want to include the $11.5 million in the fund balance at the time because that's a liability that's already on the books.
And theoretically, if rates were to be raised to this rate and funds assessed, et cetera, would they be used would all 11 million be used then to pay off unfunded liabilities in that time or a portion thereof?
In terms of the unfunded pension liability discussion, I'm going to defer to Brian. Obviously has more knowledge on that, but it is the sanitation fund's contribution to the total citywide unfunded liability.
Okay.
The $11.5 million is similar to what Ron had just mentioned. It is the sanitation fund's proportionate share of the $148 million that the city owes to PERS. It's the unfunded liability. So that is the share of, or what the sanitation fund owes.
And if I understand it correctly, it could, and that could be amortized over 20 years, over 5 years, or 10 years, is that?
Over the 25-year period, yes.
Okay, and we're just choosing to throw it into 5-year schedule right now?
Well, no, no. The 5-year rates that we're looking at now cover the sanitation fund's normal PERS costs, which are the annual costs that it pays, and its proportionate share of the, for lack of a better term, debt service of what it would owe to PERS on an annual basis for the unfunded liability portion.
Okay. I'll take that for now. Let me just ask some more questions of that a little bit differently. As I mentioned a month and a half, well, when we first initially looked at this, you're choosing to increase rates at a, not a straight line, but basically as I have a mental blank out, as a, what do you call it, when it's going higher and higher each time, whatever, a proportionally increasing rate. So it's not a flat line increase each time, correct? In other words, it's an accelerated, would you agree that the rates between each year, the rates that's posted, is not, in other words, it's not $5 each week, each month, it's $5, each year it's $5, then $6, then $7. Why was that decision made? Why? Am I as clear as mud?
Are you indicating it doesn't go up by an equal amount every year?
Right. It isn't, in fact, it accelerates. It starts at a lower amount and then it accelerates during the 5 years. I wonder why that was the case.
I think it was an evaluation of.
I'll give you the exact amounts. It was $2.89 in year 2020, $3.24, 21, $3.49 and 22, $3.79 and 23, $4.09. Anyway, it's gradually increasing around. Why was that as opposed to straight line?
Generally speaking, it relates to the amount of, I believe, the amount of capital projects we're doing in each of those years, and there's a different amount of revenue that would be needed to cover. We don't have the same capital project program every year. We don't do $10 million every year. I think 1 year we're doing $5 or $6 million, then it may jump up to 8, may drop down, it may go up. So each year the revenue requirement may be a little bit different, and so we adjust the rate so it matches that need. And then ultimately at the end of 5 years, we reach the overall goal that we're trying to attain, which is cover our costs as well as establish that reserve of $17 million.
And I guess the word I was looking for is exponentially. I'm sorry, I was stumbling for that word, but okay, I'm hearing you. In the Black study, which is what this is based on, it only looked at raising rates. As a city, did that study also look at combining rate increases with bonds, floating a capital improvement bond of any kind?
We did not consider increasing our debt.
Why?
We are in the midst of proposing the council take on sanitation debt of 20-some million dollars for some projects at the water quality control plant. And we just thought at this time it might be prudent for us to absorb that debt before we looked on taking more debt in the next financial.
Are you referring to what we approved in August, the EPSCO?
Yes.
And what was the size of that debt, just to remind us?
It's
I think
about
right-
$26 million
now
in
we're-
sanitation.
No, it's almost 35 million.
Yeah.
The borrowing that we're looking at for the water quality control plant improvements is about a $35 million borrowing.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, Joe, not necessarily this council, but prior council direction was not to pursue bonding in addition to rates. It was to cover all the costs through a rate increase. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the prior decision, the 2015 decision, was a, if you will, one-time compromise where we offered an array of rates, some with debt, some without. And council picked sort of the middle debt scenario, and that's what we are pursuing at this point. But we did not consider more debt, to answer your question.
Okay. And help me with the percentages, and then I will let someone else ask questions. The last 5 years, rates went up at what was the percentage rate? Was it at 4 point, I'm doing this from memory. I'm looking. That expires at this end of this year? Is it, oh, my notes. Was it 6%, 5%? What is it? What did we just, guys help me out here. Do you recall what our rates just increased?
We don't generally report it on a percentage basis, but that sounds about right.
Okay. And what's increasing now is about a 6.5%? I mean, doing, again, this off the top of my head. That sounds about right?
That sounds about right.
That sounds about right. So
Yeah.
this is, okay, slightly more than what was approved
Yes.
in
this
the
is
last
more
5-year cycle. Okay. That's all I'm going to ask for now, but I'll, that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
Councilmember Luémanos.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to commend you for, I'm looking at this sewer service rate. 11 cities or more, there's only 2 cities that are cheaper than our sewage rates, even with the increase. 8 of them are in Ventura County, so I want to commend you for being able to work this out so that we're still paying, the third lowest sewage rates, sanitation rates in the county of Ventura. I saw in the report that all of the presentations were well received. Were there any protest ballots that were received at the presentations, at the Chamber of Commerce or the neighborhood councils or the Council of Aging? Or what was the response? It's a very general statement. It just said all the presentations were well received. Were people understanding of the need to raise the sewage rates?
Yes. In terms of protest has a legal meaning, and up until the hearing, the only type protest we would accept is written. Tonight, you can accept oral protest during the hearing, the public hearing, but at a meeting, it would. I wasn't counting protest. But to be more human about it, I would say we got some negative comments. We got a few dirty looks and a few negative comments from some of the neighborhood council members and the council on aging members. Some of the members were not happy about it. So
But in general, were the majority of people understanding of the need for
I
infrastructure?
believe that people were understanding, and I think that there were supportive comments as well as negative comments. Whether that constituted a majority or not, I don't know. I don't think it wasn't overwhelmingly negative. I assure you of that.
What were to happen if we did not raise the sanitation rates and we did have an emergency? Because this is not for improvement. This is just for maintenance.
Right.
For us moving forward. So we're not adding anything. It's not like we're buying a Mercedes-Benz. We're just maintaining the Honda, right?
Exactly.
So that's what these costs are going towards.
Right.
And I've toured the water treatment facility many times. I think my son and I just like chemistry, and we're nerdy that way. But I see the work that goes on there, and I see the need for the updating of equipment there that will make our city workers' jobs also safer.
Right.
And to make sure that we avoid liabilities and avoid disasters. I also saw that part of these revenues in raising the rates would go towards emergencies, so that we have a reserve, so that if there is an emergency, which could constitute anything from a wildfire to an earthquake or anything else in between. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's all correct. And when we replace the Honda, sometimes we get new features like Bluetooth and stuff like that. But you're right. All we're doing is replacing what we already have. It's just sometimes a little bit better, but it's basically replacement.
Okay, and we have deferred several infrastructure projects that we have been needing.
Yes.
And this is going to cover the cost of those infrastructure projects.
We are catching up from not raising rates before the previous rate increase for many years. So there was pent-up capital demand.
So we're almost catching up from what it was in what should have been in 2015. We're kind of playing catch-up now.
Yes.
So that carburetor we needed now, we have, if we do this, then we're going to have the money to pay for that carburetor.
Yes.
Okay. That was it. And I thank you for setting forth how much the cost is going to be. I know we're dealing with other, as a working mother, I understand, wanting to know what the cost increases are going to be. There's other entities that we're dealing with, other bills that I have to pay as a working mom that, I don't know how much my rate increase is going to be, but at least I know here how much it's going to be, and I can budget for that, and I can account for that. I also like that built into this is rate stabilization for periods of revenue shortages. So if we should have lower revenues, this would also give us kind of a cushion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for a very comprehensive report. This is the actual report. There's been a lot of concerns brought up to me about things in the report, in your meetings that you had, and I understand what people are saying, but I also want to say that this is necessary for everybody out there listening. And just like Councilmember Luevano said, this is not something that's, it's not like there's no slush fund being built here. This is all for what we're doing. This is basically pay as you go to keep the water running, keep the water clean, and all other kind of stuff. So yeah, I believe this is a necessary thing.
No? I've got questions. Do you recall when you presented to the Budget Advisory Committee, any comments? What did they have to say? And for the audience, Budget Advisory Committee is a committee of individuals that the council appointed to look into, for the lack of better terms, high-cost items and look at the spending of the city, and then bring that back to us or bring it back to the department. But that's who the Budget Advisory Committee is.
My recollection is that the members that were present, there were a couple that got caught in traffic or something on their way there, but the members that were present totally understood the need to increase the rates to cover costs, to cover the upcoming inflation, and to especially initiate and complete these capital projects to maintain the system. So they totally understood. I don't recall that there was any real objection or even a negative comment related to the need to increase rates. So the Budget Advisory Committee meeting went very well.
Okay, thank you. You said that we have to have show a cost nexus between the spending and the rates. Who verifies that?
Well, that's what the study's about. I mean, we've analyzed it thoroughly in our study. And, I mean, ultimately, you get the honor of approving the report, but...
Okay, so it would fall into a category if the public or the council said, hey, we think something's wrong here, we would have to call for an audit. Am I correct with that?
Well, I mean, if you...
I'm not saying there is anything wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying that's the verification process.
Yeah, I suppose we could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a...
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just...
But that could be done, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe there's a state agency or somebody that is looking over our shoulder and saying, that's not the case. It's just, it's a rule that we have to abide by.
Well, really, it is a report to the ratepayers. I mean, those are the Those are the watchdogs in this case. is
Yeah,
that
they're the ultimate,
Yeah, and we provide that information to the public.
Okay, we had a rate increase in 2015, correct?
Yes.
Prior to that, how often did we have rate increases?
That was the first one we'd had since 2008. It had been a 7-year hiatus between 2008 and 2015.
Okay, so am I safe to say that these rates that we're looking at is somewhat based on that we kicked the can down the road and didn't raise prices even though the cost was going up for the maintenance?
Yes.
And we kind of let it slide. We, I guess, look good up here by not raising rates, but the reality is it put us further in debt. Is that a fair statement?
I think that would be fair to say.
Okay. And then looking at this chart, need for rate increase, the chart that's on the film there, right? We have it here in front of us for us that have older eyes. The 17.5, if we had an earthquake and just a couple major breaks in that could go away very quickly, am I correct?
Yes, very quickly.
And so this is a cushion, and I know in our own homes, because I talk to people, I have an older home, and a lot of my friends do, and their sewer line that just runs from the street line to the house, they're giving out, and that's like a $5,000 to maybe $7,000 or $8,000 fix.
Absolutely.
And so the $17.5 million is to protect the entire city, much bigger lines because you have the laterals and everything, and the mains going down the middle of the street. And the plant to maintain.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, no small investment there.
Yeah, okay. And so that's what we're doing, is working now with these rates to keep this cushion that obviously is needed, because we do know we have the natural breakdown of lines, and then we have the potential for a disaster, if you will.
And the other thing we have, one of the built-in factors for our reserve is that we only get paid twice a year, or we get most of our money twice per year. So again, back to your household, imagine if you only got your paycheck twice a year. I mean, how much money would you have to keep in your checking account, your savings account?
Well, I worry about
to make sure you can pay your bills every month.
I worry about my lateral going out. Because you do have other things, but
right.
That's immaterial. But I understand. But go ahead and explain that a little more.
Well, I mean, one of the components of us coming to you and asking to build, no small amount of reserve money is the fact that we get our revenue, almost a large part of our revenue, through the tax roll. And the taxes are paid by residents twice per year. And so we get revenue from the county, from the tax roll paid for sewer services twice per year. So the 6 months after we get a payment, we've got to make that money stretch until we get the next payment at the next 6 months. So we need to have some money in the bank to make sure that at the 3, 4, 5 month mark, we don't run out until we get that next big block of money at the 6 months. So we need to keep some money in the bank in order to keep us whole between checks.
Okay. That's the end of, sure. And thank you. That was the end of my questions.
I just want to clarify a statement that Councilmember Luevnos made, and I just want to make sure that we're clear. With the current proposed rate, in the first year, it goes to $38.58. I'm sorry, that's where it is currently, correct? In fiscal year 2020-21, it's $41.24. So that still keeps us in the bottom 4 cities in Ventura County. However, as we go out to the 5-year increase, ultimately gets to $55.85 a single-family home per month. And that places us above the city of Ventura, basically where there's only 3 others that are higher than us in 5 years. Now, theoretically, others could raise their rates, but on this chart, I just want to be clear, that puts us towards the top. Is that correct?
You're right in both regards. I wouldn't say one without the other. This is a snapshot chart that shows exactly what others are charging right now. Presumably, they will be increased. I live in Camarillo, and they've sent me a notice that they're increasing their rates, or they're proposing to increase rates. So other communities will likely be increasing rates. But yes, if everyone stays exactly where they are right now, we could pass some of them in the 5 years that we raise rates.
We would, on this chart, be 4th from the top, basically, if they didn't. I get it, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I just want to be sure we are clear on our relative position. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions from the council? All right. Is there anyone in the council chambers wishing to speak? Do we have any cards?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have cards submitted. Our first speaker that wishes to speak is Mike Bradbury.
Before we get started, Mr. Bradbury, I want to explain something. Is when you come up to speak, I ask, and you are not required to say where you live. And if you would just come up and say your name and if your residence location, and please understand, everybody, you absolutely do not have to tell us where you live. You don't have to say you live in Simi Valley. We're not requiring that. We're just asking because I think it's important for the council to know who they're hearing from, but if you choose not to let us know, that's well within your rights, and we will honor your right to tell us it's none of our business.
I live across the street here at the corner of Citronella and Citronella Court. And I've been here 48 years in the same house. And just almost as long as you've been here, Mayor. Only I'm not a motocross rider. Anyway, I oppose this rate for a couple of reasons. First of all, I thought your brochure was kind of missing information. It didn't tell us why you had to go up 8% per annum for 5 years on your rates and stuff like that. It didn't tell us any place where we can find information on your website, nor did it help us find other sources of information on this. I had to go to the meeting they had here on the 18th, or whenever it was, the 16th, so I could figure out what was going on, and I finally got a copy of the Black and Vetch study. And you know, in section 2.1 of that study, they put in their rates, their growth rates, their inflation rates, whatever you want to call them. They listed them in there, no rationale why they came up with those numbers. It's just like they pulled it out of the air. Now, we haven't had rates like that going on since President Carter was the President of the United States. And at that time, we got up to 10% or so in terms of inflation. I would think that we would do something a little different here and put something a little bit more accurate into this rate structure you have, so that we pay for, that you will be able to understand more what's going on. Now, on Social Security this year coming up, we got a 1.6% raise. Last year was 2.2% or something like that. Most of that went off to pay for the Medicare. But anyway, we haven't had 7 or 8% interest rates or inflation rates since President Carter. Now, I know CalPERS would sure like to earn this 8% per year compounded over a 5-year period. But they can't even make the right decisions to earn that money. Now, anyway, I'm not going to criticize them. I don't get my pension from them. I get it from myself. Now, the other thing is, if I look at the way the rate structure you put together is, over that 5-year period, if you had 100 employees over here in the sanitation department, you're going to add 45 new employees approximately in that money. Now, I know because you got your capital improvements line separate. I don't know if you're ready to hire 45 new if you had 100 employees. I don't know how many employees you have, but you would have hired 45. Now, I didn't like the idea of having us who live in single-family homes are paying the bulk of the rate. That's pretty interesting because as I look at it in my neighborhood, now that's just across the street here, in my cul-de-sac there are 10 homes. Only 2 of them have more than 2 people in them. One of them is a little kid. I think they still have their child there with them. The other one I know they do because he's only 15 years old. Now, if I go around the corner both ways, there's about 25 homes. There are 3 more that have more than 2 people in them. Now, when we were at the meeting here, they were talking about that multi-family homes, apartments, if you want to call them that, condos, have normally 2 people in them. So, but the rest of us over here, we could pay the bulk because we're single-family homes. We don't use it as much. I've been in that home now for 48 years. We've been two people home for over 14 years. So now, why should I be paying more when I'm using less than what people in apartments might be doing, or other people? I don't know. Most of the people I know here in Simi Valley are over 50 years old, and they're almost empty nesters. Anyway, I think you got to figure out another way to do it, because if you take the multi-purpose and the multi-family and the single family, put them together, you come up with something a little bit lower than what you got right now. And I would think you would like to get the interest rates down. Now, that was a quick 5 minutes. Only 5, yeah. Anyway, I propose you do something different, okay? Because these rates are too doggone high. And I don't like to pay my taxes on my property and have 25% of it be for sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Gary Scott.
Hello. I live in Simi Valley, too.
Thank you.
To minimize the scope of my research, I've limited the proposed residential single-family increase per the proposed 5-year sanitation rates monthly fixed rates chart, the real average wage, the CPI, and the cost of living adjustment, or COLA. My data was collected from the Economic Policy Institute, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and Social Security Administration. The proposed rate increases from current to 2025 are as follows: 6.5%, 7.3%, 7.3%, 7.3%, and 7.3%, for a total whopping increase of 31%. Comparing this with the CPI that affects everyone, but mostly those on fixed incomes and the poor, COLA that affects seniors and the permanently handicapped, and finally nominal wage increases for workers. The following data represents an average of the previous 10 years, which also happens to be a period of strong economic recovery. During a slowing economy, the proposed rate increases would appear more ridiculous. Anyways, the real average hourly wage estimated by visually weighing the annualized 10-year graph was 1.3% plus or minus 0.2%. But hours worked per week have declined, offsetting some of the hourly wage increases. So over a 5-year period, ceteris paribus, a total wage increase would be 6.5%, or the same as the first year's proposed sanitation rate increase. The CPI averaged is 1.6%, or 8% over the same 5-year period. COLA average is 1.5% or 7.5% for the same 5-year period. In conclusion, over the 5 years, the sanitation rate increase is 24.5% higher than one could expect wages to increase, 23% higher than anticipated CPI, and 23.5% higher than COLA. I find this cold cows plan will probably cause financial harm to those that are most vulnerable. And my recommendation is that the sanitation department find a way to become more efficient and then resubmit new proposed rates that are in line with the CPI, COLAs, and increases in wages. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joe Pichowski.
Evening, Mayor Mashburn, members of the council. I think you're all aware I live here in Simi Valley, Wood Ranch. 44%. That's what this is going to do to raising our rates. This is not just, and this gets paid in property taxes. Yeah, I know, it's ratepayers are paying. But make no mistake, as you heard the gentleman say earlier, they get paid twice a year with property taxing, when property taxes get paid. It's bad enough that the Democrats in Sacramento are driving people out of the state in droves. Now, we're going to have our city council turn around and pass a 44% sanitation rate increase to drive people out of the city. It's time to stop. Tell the sanitation department that they're just going to have to do with less money. I understand the need to turn around and have a reserve fund. But the way you build a reserve, there's two ways to build a reserve fund. One way is to raise the rates. The other is to cut costs. Tell them to go back and find a way to cut the costs. You guys have the power to do that. And it's time that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Patrick Marin.
Hi, Mayor and council members. My name's Pat Moran, and I've been in Simi Valley here a little longer than the city. The city was, we just celebrated October, and I came out here in March of '69. Thanks to Ron, he did a great job for the 6 of us who came to that meeting on the 16th to learn about this situation. We appreciate everything he did, and the other gentleman who was with him. He was very, very helpful in explaining the basic drivers behind your problems. Basically, for sanitation for a year, it's 2021 is $28 million. So let's call it $30 million. So over the course of this 5-year thing, it's $150 million for the total sanitation budget. All right. Capital projects, either using what came in the mail of $9,743,000, which is about $10 million a year for the first year, or the thing that was sent out today, is basically $40 or $50 million over the next 5 years. So we're talking capital projects of what's the term? State of good repair. They use it in transit all the time. To get things back to a state of good repair, to keep them in a state of good repair, that's about $50 million of your $150 million you're going to spend over the next 5 years. So there are some questions about what are the other drivers besides these capital projects, and I'll leave it for you to get those things. Eventually, though, at the end of the 5th year, the rate on the tax bill will be $670.20. And because I've been here so damn long, as a citizen, some of us remember when we get our tax bill, it'll say property 13 maximum 1% tax. It's the biggest thing on the first line. And underneath it are the little bitty things like vector control, where we slap at the mosquitoes. Okay, I understand that. And the thing like Rancho Simi Parks and Maintenance. They were smart. They slipped something on the bill about 20 years ago. They're in good shape. But Simi Valley Sanitation Sewer, at the end of this 5 years, within a year or two after that, you are going to be bigger on my tax bill. The bottom item, Simi Valley Sani Sewers, it's going to be bigger than my Prop 13 maximum 1% tax. And I know that we only had 1,770 people protest out of 38,000. We only had 6 folks at the meeting that Ron so ably helped us understand. But this is where the rubber meets the road. You are going to have some very unhappy people who open these things up in years to come and find out that they're paying more for waste disposal than they are for their property tax, their main property tax. And I wish you well. You can actually, there's only 1,700 things. You can do that Prop 28 thing and just do whatever you want. But I wish you well, because the day of reckoning will come when your sewer charges are larger than people's initial tax bills.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Jones.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, Councilwoman Litzner, Councilmember Judge, and Councilwoman Luevanos. My name is Jennifer Jones. I am a resident of Simi Valley. I am here to talk about this sanitation rate increase. I actually did a little bit of research, talked to a couple of people. I understand the need for repairs. I understand the need for maintenance. And I guess some of that has fallen behind over the years. I get that. What I have an issue with and some concerns are the $11.5 million that you like to call CalPERS, liability, pensions, sugarcoat it however you want. The bottom line is it's $11.5 million for pensions for sanitation employees. Now, my limited knowledge is pensions is the city was supposed to be holding on to this money for these people, making sure when they retire, they got their money, it wasn't spent. So my question is, why wasn't the city budgeting for this liability, CalPERS pensions years ago? You knew it was coming up. So instead of budgeting for it, you now want to do an 8% sanitation rate increase and include in that increase the $11.5 million for these pensions. So if you want to take that $11.5 million out for the pensions, I would be completely fine with this, because it will be going to repairs, it will be going to maintenance, and all the other things that are necessary. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Brown.
Good evening. Michael Brown, 52-year resident of Simi. You guys got me the first time on this increase. You're not going to get me again. From 2015 to 2009, I'm going to refer to only single-family homes, and there's 32,000 of them here in Simi. We paid $64.4 million in sewage fees. Under your new proposal, we will end up paying $92.6 million. That's just single-family homes. During the first span of the 5 years, the average difference between multifamily and single-family was $10.18. It will go up to $14.02. You have 2 people in a single family, 2 people in a multifamily. The wastewater should be the same. I also noticed, too, that District 8 water bill some of the multifamily pay into that. They pay their sewage and water bill at the same time. If they're under, multifamilies under Golden State Water, they will pay into the Administrative Services Department of the City of Simi Valley. Does that money come back, or is it going to get funneled elsewhere? Actually, I had some idle time on my hands. And I've researched some of these, and the only one I'm going to compare is Thousand Oaks. Thousand Oaks over the next 5 years is going to go up 1% per year, and they will cap it right around $39. Here's the catch. Their multifamily and single family are the same. So I think that's a big issue I'm hearing with a lot of people is, why are single family having to pay more than multifamily? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Jessica Freeman.
Well, I think I'd just like to echo what the last few speakers have said, because I haven't done an analysis of all this. But this thing about the fact that it is a separate item on our tax bill, how come? How come it's not covered under, all this thing about how we don't pay enough in taxes because of Proposition 13? I always see this as we pay fine under Proposition 13, because anytime you guys want more money, you just figure out a way to make it another line on the other side of our tax bills, and we just blindly, and knowing we have to pay it or we'll be in default or some kind of thing and the property will be lost, but we have very little to say about this extra added stuff that gets added to our tax bill. And I wish you guys would just realize that we can only add so much, like they all say. Why is there a difference between a residence is a residence? I don't understand that at all, that it should be treated the same. The fact that more people live in, you'd be surprised how many multi-families are in a single-family home. So are you going to go around and check that, see how many homes have 10 people living in them or 2 people living in them? There's no way of doing that. So why would you even try to say that one residence is a little different than the other? They should all be treated the same. And I really think this increase, it needs to be more transparent as to the requirements and where this money's going and why it has to go up so much. It's just crazy that it's going to be so much in 5 years. I can see, like they're saying 1% or 2%, but the amount you're asking for is not acceptable.
Thank you.
And we have one remaining card, although the speaker does not wish to speak, and she is in support. Gloria Bowman.
Thank you. Yeah. Staff, would you like to reply to any of the comments?
There does seem to be some lingering confusion on the liability for the unfunded PERS. I think we've tried to say it, but although it's shown on the balance sheet as a liability, there is not, this rate increase is not to fund paying off the $11.5 million unfunded liability for PERS. It isn't. There's an annual cost currently for PERS and for maintaining the interest, or I think the city manager called it the so-called debt service on the unfunded liability, but there's no further increase above the current annual cost, except for it's inflated as we go forward. There's no other increase. There's no aim to pay off the unfunded liability. So I think that was one of the comments that was made that may have confused some people.
There was a comment that it appeared that I believe that the speaker mentioned that it appeared that we would be hiring 45 new employees. And no, we will not be hiring 45 new employees. Basically, at this time, we don't anticipate hiring any additional employees. Matter of fact, over the years, we have cut some employee numbers, as well as you all know, every year we go through the budget process and we do our best to make cuts and to enhance our efficiencies, use more systems that take less manpower but provide a greater amount of productivity. So I believe that the sanitation fund is doing its best to reduce costs and minimize any rate increases, but we are not going to be hiring 45 new employees in the next 5 years.
Question. Wait, hold on. Questions from the council to staff.
I just wanted to follow up with a question of one of the last speakers who talked about the differential between residential rate and the single family versus multifamily. Would you speak to that, the reasoning for the difference?
And if I can, I'm going to call on our consultant. I have Ann Bowie and Roberta Morales here from Black and Veatch, and they gave us some advice on this, so I'm going to ask for their help on this.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. There are differences between single-family and multifamily on a variety of fronts. First, if we exclude counting the number of people in each type of dwelling unit, which, as you know, and you can probably imagine, has a number of issues associated with that. You know, it's going to change at any period of time. But the other thing is it also creates a structure that parallels what you have on the water side, okay? And right now, water does have a differential between those different classes. And so what we've tried to do is to minimize confusion when people are looking at Proposition 218 notices and going, well, wait a minute, over here you handle them differently than over here. So there's a consistency in terms of how the units are treated, okay? That is the reason why. Now, I will tell you that in many, many, many cities, multifamily are treated as a non-residential customer class. And that has often a higher rate than what you might see in a single family as well, okay? It does depend upon how residents discharge their water and use it, okay? So that's primarily the reason why we have a difference between the two. What we do is we analyze the water patterns and the water usage, apply a factor, because as you know, not all water is returned back to the sewer system, right? We use it for irrigation, things like that, so not everything goes back. And based upon that, you can actually see differences in how these different types of classes use their water and their sewage and discharge to the sewage system. So that's why there is a difference between that. It is based upon engineering and actual usage, not based upon number of people in a household. Further questions? Alberto, do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to add one more thing. Most people always compare single family to multifamily, but the rate is on a per EDU basis. So multifamily is not just one unit, it's per unit that is at the, if it's an apartment complex, for example, it is how many units are within that apartment complex. So if the apartment complex has 30, it's 30 times that rate. So it's not a one-for-one, as you know, to a single-family home.
If that's helpful.
Okay,
I've got,
Council members?
I got it.
go ahead if you like.
Well, then I'm curious, because I wasn't aware of the way you did that. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, because an apartment is going to discharge the same amount of water as a single-family house if it has the same amount of people living in it. So why don't we find a way to compromise the rates so that they're the same? And that would lower the rates for the housing, for the single families, might raise the rates for the multifamilies, but it would make them equal.
Well, as Alberto just explained, it's based on an EDU basis, right? So I'm going to give you a number, so don't quote me on that percentage, but for example, a single family would be considered 1 EDU, right? Equivalent dwelling unit basis. The multifamily would be 0.7 of that. Most apartment complexes have separate meters for irrigation, right? It's separate. So in a single-family home, we don't have 2 meters, we don't have 2 lines. And so during the winter, some of that water isn't happening because we're not irrigating our landscape. Multifamily doesn't have that consideration already because it's already separated out. So they're already given a benefit in that it's 0.7 of the usage.
I got you. I'm tracking what you're saying, but landscaping, watering, that kind of stuff isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about putting stuff down the sewer.
I know, but it's how we calculate based off of water usage, right? So you get a 0.7 factor already coming back. That's how you do it on the sewer side.
But are you saying that a person that lives in a 1,500 square foot apartment, or persons, but you're not counting the people,
right?
They're not going to use the sewer system as much as a single-family dwelling. Is that what you're saying?
If you're just looking at inside usage.
Well, the only thing I know that goes in the sewer is what goes down the sink and what goes down the toilet.
Right, but if you're in a single family residential home and you're watering your lawn, because we use water usage as the basis in order to determine the sewer rate, we don't know when you're watering your lawn and when you're not. We make the assumption that during the coldest period, during the winter period months, there's sufficient moisture out that you're not watering your lawn as much. So therefore, we know what that usage pattern is. The difference between the single family and the multifamily is that the irrigation aspect of it is already removed on the multifamily.
There's also a simpler way to look at this.
I'm sorry?
There is a simpler way to look at this.
Yeah, I mean...
We have historically assumed that there is lower density in multifamily units than there are in single-family residential
And
units.
that is true as well.
And I agree that examples can be shown where this house might have 1 person and that apartment might have 2 people living in it. So yes, there could be an inequity. But in a general sense, it is our assumption in this rate study that there are more people in general living in single-family residential units than are living in multifamily units. So like I say, although the speakers can give you examples, that's not true.
Where can we get
We
that?
haven't surveyed it unit by unit.
Well, the census data.
Excuse me, where do we get that data?
Well, we did not do a population study for this round. And I don't recall seeing one. That's one I've adopted since we've been doing rates.
So some of the confusion I have is it goes back to like when we were talking about the tier system and water supply. I can understand if I use a gallon, I get charged a gallon. If I flush a gallon, I get charged for that. And I know we don't meter what's going out. And what you're saying, you're metering what's going in, but you're pulling a number out of the sky for what my landscaping is. And I think that's where there might be some difficulty, because if you look at my water bill as compared to somebody that has a big lawn, and I've done the desert landscaping thing and all that, trying to save water, but I'm still going to pay this higher sewer rate because I have a single-family dwelling. Am I on target?
Well, it's kind of done, I mean, I don't, we look at it as a whole group of accounts together, so there are going to be some winners and some losers in that particular scenario, but we look at
I
everybody's.
don't want to be a loser, and I don't want any of my...
Sorry, yeah. Very, very true. And there, I mean, there is a possibility. I am sure that the consultants, my colleagues on the other side for water, probably pulled the census data, at least as a starting point, to determine that Simi Valley probably has somewhere between 2.3 to 2.7 people per household per the census. Per the census, okay? That's the only, I mean, that's the only data that we would have with respect to population. I will be honest and say that I do not recall if the census goes down to multifamily apartment level. I know it talks about how many people are in apartments, I mean, in terms of that they're apartment dwellers, but not necessarily how many people per apartment in that sense. It is a point of consideration that you could blend. It runs the risk, and I will be very honest with you here, it runs the risk that you might have some inequities as a result of that. And I, as a consultant, must be very, very careful about the Prop 218 requirements for equity on customer classes. That's what it comes down to, is based upon the data that we have and the numbers we're looking at for usage, for the assumptions used with respect to how much gets returned to the sewer, I have to be careful grouping classes of customers together that don't exhibit the same behavior, because then by definition they are not the same customer class, and that's a requirement.
I'm sorry. Could you define that, what you mean by they're not the same customer class?
Under cost of service principles, okay, customers are grouped together based upon similar characteristics: how they use water, how they discharge water. So, for example, you would never, ever group a Xerox with a single-family residential home, right? I mean, I think clearly people would understand that Xerox, and I'm just choosing a big company name, I'm not blaming Xerox, but a big company discharges to your sewer system things that you would typically not find in a single-family residential home when they are flushing their toilets or running water down the kitchen sink, right? Those are two very clear examples of customers that should never be grouped together because they don't use or discharge the system in the same fashion. Well, so too, when you have different types of customers, you have to look at how they use the systems. If they are not the same, I can't group them together and make them the same and give them the same rate, because I violate cost of service principles, which is the requirement for 218.
May I?
Yes.
Along those same lines,
yes,
you're talking about the usage.
The usage or the discharge system.
The discharge,
yes.
The discharge in a single-family home is the same as a discharge in a multifamily home. So that, can't we tie that together? I know the water going in is different. I have a pool. I have to put water in my pool.
Oh, yeah.
Type of thing. But, so I know I probably use more water than the average one-person household. But I have condos next to me, and they're using the sanitation aspect the same amount of time
Right,
as
and
I am.
I would concur with that, and it depends upon, again, this is, the difference here now is that how we get the data to formulate the value of an EDU is based upon water consumption with return factors applied. Okay?
Does it have to be based on water consumption?
We did look at other ways, and we were directed that that was what they would prefer, to keep it consistent with what water is doing, what your water rates are doing, so that there's a closer tie. Okay?
Well, there's another reason. There's another reason. I mean, our costs are really volumetric. I mean, our treatment cost is based on how much sewage we take in. So if this party uses less water than that party,
there's an impact.
There is a discount that's applicable to that unit that uses less water. And what I'm trying to tell you is we have gone forward with the assumption that by and large, multifamily units use less water and discharge less water than single-family units.
And you have used,
Hold on, let's,
can I ask a question, Mayor Mashburn?
there
Thank
you go.
I'd like to know, I'm not an engineer. I can feel the frustration in the room. I'm a working mother. I work 2 jobs. I get it. A lot of the comments that we've heard are the frustration at the economy not keeping up, our wages not keeping up with the costs. Right now, CEOs, according to the Economic Policy Institute, make 271 times more than the $58,000 a year annual average salary of the typical American worker. I understand your frustration, trust me. I'm a working mother, I get it. But we have costs, we have experts, we have 4 experts here who have calculated the costs. I'm not an engineer, but we have data analysts and engineers here who have been doing this for many, many years. I would reckon in this room here, between the 4 of you, we probably have at least 50 years of experience in this field in regard to what is the cost and how those costs are distributed. We have to look at the community as a whole, as a city council. Are there exceptions? Yes. We just voted last week to have a flat water rate system. And that's going to be winners and losers. Some people will spend more money, even though they use less water, and other people will save money. That's the frustration. That's why I wanted a tiered water rate system, because I wanted it to be more equitable. This is equitable in terms of looking at the discharge. And if you look at the report, if you look at page 2 of the report, and you look at, there is a discounted rate for senior housing. There is a discounted rate for mobile homes because of the nexus of the usage of the water discharge. There is wear and tear on these systems. We have, for too many years, not paid into the cost of maintaining our system. And if we do not maintain the system now, then we're going to pay a lot more. It's just like when you have a used car and you don't fix the carburetor and you keep waiting because you don't have money to pay for that carburetor that's broken, then eventually the whole engine is going to break down and it's going to cost you 10 times more. So we're at the point now where we have to pay to fix the carburetor, or we're going to pay a lot more and have to replace the entire engine. That's what the system is here. It is a system of investing, not even investing, maintaining the proper infrastructure. And that's something that we haven't had a large investment from our federal government to give us as municipalities to invest in our infrastructure. So now we are left to ensure the public safety and welfare of our residents, of our entire community, to make sure that we have the safety and the health and well-being that we need to maintain our sewage system. There have been other cities that have waited, they have deferred, like multiple council members and the mayor have mentioned here. They've deferred the cost of maintaining the system that needed to be maintained, and as a result of that, they had huge sewage spills. The flooding with the floodwaters that they had back east in the Carolinas, they had huge sewage issues because there was so much rain, and there were huge costs and millions of dollars of damage that were caused to those communities in the Carolinas because they did not have a sewage system that could keep up. I've taken at least several tours of the sewage and water treatment system here in Simi Valley. I can tell you that we are prepared for emergencies, and if we make this investment now, we will continue to be prepared, not just for the flow that we have now, but in case we have additional water, in case we get flooding. I know that with this investment in our infrastructure over the next 5 years and not taking out bonds, that we will be able to sustain the lifestyle, the quality of life that we have come to expect here in the city of Simi Valley for everyone.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could ask a question of the city attorney.
Yes, Councilmember Judge.
If we were to, as a council, ask for these rates to be changed as far as balancing them out, like a couple of council members have mentioned so far, would we have to do another 218 process?
And I'm glad we have the consultant here too, but from the legal perspective, and please either staff or consultant correct me, every rate, let's say single family, multifamily, should have been justified and was justified legally on a cost of service. And obviously, you can have different cost of service. Let's assume we have a valid cost of service. That would mean to me that any particular rate could be lowered. You don't have the same concerns you might have in a tiered system because it's not tiering. And since you're automatically recouping less in the cost of service by lowering it, you could pick and choose some of them and lower them. You can't raise any of them, right, without a cost of service,
Right.
but you could lower
You
them.
cannot, because the 218 is out and everything without going through the whole process, you always have the option to go lower.
So we'd have to put out another 218.
No.
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 No. What
For
I'm saying
lower,
is
you could go take-
lowering, you can
Well,
go
okay, but
down,
wait.
you can do it,
But to balance the rates, we would have to raise some of them.
yes.
Well,
So
we
they would
just-
have to be included in the new 218
If we
process.
thought we had to have that much money. But you
I
could
think
lower
there'd be a
individual.
ceiling that you could go to if we raised any of them.
Correct.
And you could lower others. And I'd like to say that I don't think, what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing the argument so much that we don't need to invest in our future, we don't need to invest in maintenance. That isn't what, I don't think the comments that I heard were not saying, no, we don't want to invest in it. I think what I'm hearing is we want to invest fairly and equally into the system. And that's what I'm looking for. So no way am I saying defer, don't do it, let the maintenance go. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I have a single-family dwelling, and I want to know that I'm paying the same for flushing my toilet as a person that's living in a multi-unit occupancy. That's all. That's my comment, is let's all pay an equal amount together and take care of it.
May I, I'm sorry, I know that I'm a consultant and not allowed to ask, but may I ask the city attorney a question on
Sure,
process for
sure.
218, if I could?
Sure.
And I think it would help clarify for the rest. So what could happen, as a hypothetical, is you could pass as a council, let's say that we pass a number. The proposed percentages that are in front of you today. We could go back, re-examine the single-family, multifamily. In likelihood, multifamily would then go up. Single-family would probably not change. It's a very nominal difference because there's so many more single-family residential homes than multifamily. It might change a penny, maybe. I can't do that. I can't verify that without doing an actual calculation. Would that still be in compliance with 218?
You'd have to submit the maximum rate to the population, the property owners
Okay.
again. So if you were to raise the ones for multifamily, you can't raise them above what was published right now. You'd have to
Right, that's what I
You'd have to
thought.
renotice the 218.
Right, that's what I thought.
You could, the council could pass these today and then do another 218 and then change them. I mean,
I don't think anybody here is asking to raise the rates on the residential right now. So we're not looking to change that. But
Well, then, okay.
All I'm asking about is balancing all four of those tiers, because you've got single-family, multifamily, senior home, mobile home. Like the mayor said, everybody flushes the toilet the same.
Well, the seniors receive a discount, and there's a specific reason for that.
For the senior homes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll take that one out of the mix.
Yes.
We go with the mobile home, multifamily, and single-family.
And
Make them the same rate and average it out, and show us what that looks like.
well, multifamily and the mobiles would go up. Single family would barely change, if any. Because it's just a proportionality. If you think about how many more you have with the single-family residential, and we still have to recover X number of dollars.
I understand, but it's
Yeah,
all a
so-
matter, right now, it's a matter of perception and fairness.
And Councilmember
that
Judge,
is
let me
true.
just, hold on, let me just say
Sorry.
that
Mhm.
even if you try to seek the same, let's say, same net revenue on those classes, which I think is what you're getting at, since these were published this way, like multifamily 2925, if that were to go up even a penny, you'd have to re-218, even if your net revenue that you're seeking is the same, like you're saying. So it would have to be republished.
Okay. So do another one.
I think.
Well,
Any other
another
comments,
option.
I do. Maybe I calculated this wrong, but I figured out from what we currently have to the 24-25, and it's a annual difference for a single-family home of $207, and an annual difference per year for a multi of $152. So there's about a $50 difference. Well, if I times that 50 that the single-family homes are paying over the multifamilies, that's only 1.6 million. So to me, we should be able to recoup that in other places. You're saying it won't change the single-family. I guess I'm not understanding how it's not going to lower the single-family if we try and even them all up. I guess I'm not understanding that.
I can't, I have to run the full numbers. It just, I can't tell you how much it's going to, because you've got so many more single-family residential, is what I'm saying. I'd have to run the numbers, and I have nothing in front of me right now.
Oh, okay, I see
That's
what you're
I'm
saying. I see what
I
you're
can't give you an
saying.
exact number.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So
Now-
if we, can I ask you a
so
question?
yes, yes.
So if we change the numbers, we could run afoul of a 218 liability, legal liability, and we could potentially face a lawsuit.
Well, no, I would say that you would have to, and I'm sure that your council would say, as with your city manager and everybody, you must rerun the 218 process.
We just do it again.
Yes. Now, I would also venture as a possible way is that you could just call them residential and senior.
Well, wouldn't it seem suspect? I mean, because we've already sent these rates out, right? So if I live in a multiple family, and just for, transparency, I live in a single family residence. And I've lived in a multiple family residence. And I know, for example, that the rent has gone up 50% in the past 5 years here in
Yes.
Simi Valley.
Yes.
Huge, huge burden. But my mortgage has not. My mortgage has not gone up by that much. So I know that it is a financial burden and responsibility to have a single family dwelling. But I also know that I see my neighbor, washing his car every weekend,
wow.
and all the water running into the sewage. And I know that when I was in an apartment, that never happened.
Right.
So I understand the nexus, and you, as an expert and as an engineer, have set forth clearly the nexus between water usage and how it would be different for multiple family dwelling versus a single family dwelling. And I understand that. My concern is, if I were living in a multiple family dwelling, and I had already seen these rates, that they were going to be lower, and then all of a sudden I got a new Prop 218 notice that they're going to be significantly higher, I would be very upset. I would say, wow, what happened? Now you're targeting me as a multiple family housing dwelling. And my concern would be, are there other cities that has happened, and have there been legal implications due to that?
In my experience base, I have not seen single-family and multifamily, and Alberto, you might have a different view in your experience base, seen them grouped together.
So in
Nor
other
have I,
cities-
and I have seen, I have not seen them grouped together. Now, I will say that I do not know whether or not there have been any litigation or lawsuits or concerns that have been raised with respect to that.
And how many other cities do you see, would you say, and you've worked in multiple cities, would you say that you've seen where this same rate structure, where there's a single family rate and a multiple family rate?
Oh, that's very common.
So
That is
how-
very, very common. I mean,
Dozens of cities, hundreds of cities?
Yeah, yes. But I think Prop 218 has no requirement for customer classes. It only has it has a requirement that you have a residential and a non-residential if that's what you serve. So that's why I suggested you could group residential and seniors with, but, having said that, I also understand your point that's very well raised about this notice has gone out, and, you could have issues with multifamily coming forward and going, wait, I mean, no
Would it
different
be
things.
possible to get an analysis, and maybe we should consider asking this question and getting the answer at a different date? And the analysis would be, okay, if we decided to attempt to level the playing field to where everybody's charged the same rate, okay, all residences, whether it be multi or single, can we look at those difference in numbers? I think that's what you were trying to do, and see if it's significant enough to actually consider that. Because there's going to be expense to doing the 218 again if that's necessary. I'm a firm believer that we ought to, it's like when we talk about the gasoline versus the the tiered water system. If you use a gallon, pay for a gallon. It's real simple.
Well,
If that gallon is too much, try using less. That's
Well,
why we buy cars that get better mileage. you
What
know?
Ann was referring to earlier is...
I'm sorry?
If I understand the question correctly, what Ann was referring to earlier is if we keep the same revenue coming in and we do this look at what if we keep the multifamily and residential rates peg them at the same amount,
Yes.
we could come back and show you what that would be. Before we do any Prop 218 or anything else, we could just say,
I
City
mean,
Council, this is what you asked us to look
We're not in
at.
a situation where we have some type of emergency to get this done. We can take the time and do exactly that and
Yeah.
study it. Maybe it makes no sense to do.
Right, and what she was trying to say is because there's likely far more single-family residential units, even though we get more revenue from the multifamily units, it's spread across all the single-family units, maybe it's a couple of cents. But we can give you those exact numbers. We could come back and show you that.
That's what I would like to see happen, is have a better handle on what we're looking at, so.
Perhaps one of the other things is because there's concern about what is the standard, if you will, or what is the practice. We could interview, or we could look at other cities in the area, we could look at other Ventura County services and see what they do with their sanitation rates for single-family versus multifamily units, and
Joe,
give you a
just
little chart on that.
I'm fine with that. Mr. Mayor, I would just ask that if you put forth something like that, can you clarify exactly what groups you want us to look at and possibly combine or, put at the same rate? Because we have 4 right now, and I just want to get clarification so that when we present numbers to you, there's no, you know what I mean?
Yeah, good
Why didn't you run
question.
it this way?
Good question. I think what we're looking at is leaving the seniors
Alone.
separate
Okay.
and residential
Everybody else?
trying to equal
Okay.
them out.
Okay. Just for
that-
clarification. That's all. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I have a whole nother question about this, and I think and if you're going to be looking at that, and which is great, I would like us to go back to the Corolla report, which we read through, which told us, which is a great report, which basically gave us 4 different funding mechanisms for this amount. As I was taking notes from all of those who came up and spoke, and I think that they were very valid concerns, it's not just about the inequity between single-family homes and multifamily homes. Some of it truly is, as Gary Scott eloquently showed, a 31% increase over 5 years. The total amount that we're trying to generate, that's a lot of money. And for whether you're in a multifamily home or whether you're in a single-family home, if your bill goes up 35% over 5 years and you're on a fixed income, and we know that our population averages over 45, we have a lot of fixed income people. If it goes up that much, you truly feel it, and it can be a real hardship. And so I would like us to reevaluate ways of actually, and I'm not questioning necessarily the need for this amount of money. If I understand how it's loosely grouped, we have the need for reserves, we have the need for overhead and management increasing costs, and then we have 56 projects, which was projected over 20 years, and you've given us another that basically takes it down to 41 projects. Okay, 41 projects over 5 years. And what the Corolla project before, you took what they...
Yeah, they fed us the CIP.
They fed it, exactly, and then you made it how it would work if we paid as we go and we had no debt. And I appreciate that was your charge, so this isn't... But if ever there is a time when I think that bonding is appropriate, and I'm anti-debt, just for the record, I drive a car with 250,000 miles on it. So since we're doing these car analogies, I am anti-debt. But that being said, whenever there's appropriate time for bonding or debt, in my mind, it's when you are building infrastructure or repairing infrastructure that is designed to last 30 years and longer. And so by what we're doing with, and granted so some of, a bulk of those projects are being designed or being repaired so that those sewer lines can last, so people can enjoy them 30-plus years. And so if ever, in my mind, if ever there's an appropriate time to bond or to pay over time, it would be if you're going to get the benefit over time. And so I personally am uncomfortable with these rates that we're suggesting to increase that would take us to the top of the tier in terms of over 5 years, possibly, and compared with the rest of the county. I would prefer we are very modest in our rate increases, and we looked about funding with bonds or a way over time so that we are not burdening our taxpayers in full.
Okay, so if we can move forward with... If we could move forward, hold on just a
When you're
second.
done, can I make a comment?
Yeah, when I'm
Thank you,
done.
Mayor Mashman.
Thank you. If we move forward with doing the further analysis of trying to bring a closer equality, I guess would be the right word, and at the same time come back with payment method, or there's 4 choices, I think?
I would have personally gone with 3, number 3.
Okay, but anyway.
Which was basically a modest increase with more debt, but that was.
Okay, so bring back also a report on that, more clear to us, so it's not just what we've read, that you've given us choices of which way to move forward. Okay? Yes, Councilmember Luevanos.
Thank you, Mayor Mashburn. You know, I understand the frustration. I really do. I really do. I don't want us to punt our debt anymore. We did that 5 years ago, and we didn't pay for the infrastructure that we needed to invest in. And now we're at this point in time where we need to pay the bills. We need to make sure that we maintain the safety and the public health of this community, and we need to invest in that. A comment that both of you, that I heard Joe made, and I think you made as well, Ann, was that, the majority, and I'd like to know if we are going to go back and look at more data, which I love data, I love numbers, is to see what percentage of, and I think you said it, Joe, was that the majority of the fees come from multiple family, or more of the fees come? I'd like to know, because if multiple family dwellings already consist of, make up 50% of the income versus single family, which make up less, then I think that would be something to consider as well. So can you clarify that comment?
Most of the fees come from single family.
Yeah. Okay. But
most of the fees come from single-family residential. That is the bulk of our customer class.
Because we have more single-family dwellings than multiple family dwellings.
Right.
But the impact on the infrastructure and the nexus of the cost is equitable. It is related. It does meet the Prop 218 standard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we skew the numbers, we run the risk of not meeting the nexus of the cost.
As a consultant said, we can group the customers in different ways and still not run afoul of
I cannot
the nexus
issue.
requirement.
I'm sorry, I can't issue a report.
That's exactly what we've
that's
asked you
not-
to come back with.
Right, I cannot
And-
issue a report that would not meet the nexus of 218.
And we're not going to
Right.
take a chance of going afoul with the state or anybody.
And first and foremost, the report is going to make sure that you get the revenues or the proposed revenues necessary to do what you need to do. Maintain your system, operate your system, meet your obligations. That's the number one requirement in any of these studies. The next part we go through is to make sure that we recover to the best of our ability rates that are fair and equitable to the different customer classes, and looking in terms of the burden that they place upon the system. Okay. Whether I go back and make analysis for a combination of different types of customer classes to address your concerns, Councilmember Lister, with respect to how we're going to finance for those necessary CIP projects. At the end of the day, the report still has to meet cost of service requirements and Prop 218 requirements.
Okay.
I just have one more quick question.
Hold on just a second. Our
If I
attorney has-
may throw one thing out as it's going here. So the 218 process was done. There's two factors. One that I don't know the answer to is whether there's anything we're missing with the county if you don't do a reso right away or you have time for that. So there's one issue.
We have time.
Okay.
We don't have to submit to the county until the middle of next
The
year.
second question is whether the council wants to preserve the current 218 process or ditch it. So if you want to possibly use it and you don't know, then the proper thing I think to do would be continue this hearing to a date certain. And that way, if you want to go back to this exact study, you'll still have it. If you let it go, you may not have this study anymore under 218, and then you have to restart for sure. And right now, you may or may not know whether you want to restart. So again, what I'm saying is you can ask for this more information, continue the hearing to a date certain, and then if you want to go with the old 218, you'll still have the ability to do that. If you want to start a new 218, obviously you can do that at that time.
No, I think we need to keep the old 218 until we get the report back from you. So we should continue to a date certain.
To a date certain, and then publish notice of it like that.
So, I'm sorry, just a question. Mayor? Mayor
Yes.
Mashburn? So if we preserve the 218 process that we have right now, and they come back with the studies, and council decides, we want to have I'll call it a flat rate for now, for the 3 categories of dwellings, of residential dwellings, then, the rate was different than what we noticed in Prop 218, then we would have to start the Prop 218 process of notice all over again. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Okay,
we'll have
that's-
to decide
that's-
at that time.
Thank you. I just wanted to
If the
clarify
rates
that.
are higher, if the rates stay the same or drop, then we don't.
We can
If the rates
drop.
are higher for any of the...
For any of the
so if they're
classifications.
Any of the classification for multiple family or for mobile home. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to make sure that we had transparency.
Okay, so we're going to continue to a date certain. That date will be, Mr. City Manager.
December 9th?
Okay, December 9th. I want to thank members of the audience that spoke. Sometimes government works. Sometimes. And that's not a commitment to change anything, but it's a commitment to look closely based on comments. So thank you very much.
As they say in China, time will tell.
Thank you.
Where are we?
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, the clerk's mentioned, I think in this circumstance, because of the 218 process, it would be advisable to have a vote to do that continuance, to actually vote to do it, even though it seemed to be the consensus of the council.
I move that we vote to continue this 218 hearing till December 9th.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a vote second. Call for the vote. And at this time, we're going to count the vote.
Motion passes unanimously to continue the hearing to a date certain of December 9th.
Okay, at this time, council is going to take a 10-minute break. Call the meeting back to order.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is item 5, and this is the time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and certain committee informational reports. Speakers will be called in the order in which their card was received, and they will have 3 minutes. When the yellow light comes on, you will have 30 seconds to conclude your comments. City Council members cannot respond to your questions during this time, however, may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mr. Mayor, I will call the first speaker is Mr. John Lapper. The second speaker would be Dr. Gabino Aguirre.
Mayor Mashburn and City Council people. We all have choices. I could have stayed home and watched the 0-6 Miami Dolphins play the Roethlisberger-less Steelers Monday Night Football, or come here tonight to take a stand about fair play, decency, and respect for our future volunteers that need City Council approval. After I heard about the October City Council meeting in regards to Mayor Mashburn publicly shaming Leanna Brand as she sought City Council approval to disapprove of her appointment as a volunteer to the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Board, I watched 45 minutes of our mayor engaging in an embarrassing attack of a Simi Valley constituent. Councilwoman Lister even stated how accomplished Leanna Brand was and qualified as a former member of the Cultural Arts Board. Fast forward to a dangerous precedent set by Mayor Mashburn. The use of social media to call out a volunteer due to adversary opinions and a personal vendetta by Mayor Mashburn over comments made in the heat of a campaign for mayor and opposition on SB 54. While Leanna's tone may have ruffled the mayor's feathers, I would hope better judgment, leadership, and methods would be adopted by the Simi Valley City Council moving forward when using social media to scrutinize qualified volunteers with different political views, as the last time I checked, the City Council is a nonpartisan body. As a libtard, lapdog, Nazi, racist, communist that my adversaries often have labeled me on social media, am I to be publicly called out by this council if I need approval to volunteer for the neighborhood council? Am I to be publicly shamed without notice, blindsided with social media posts, perhaps taken out of context, and political campaign opinions by this council? Is my freedom of speech during the comment time going to discredit me because you may disagree with me? Who would want that type of abuse? What Mayor Mashburn encountered is no different than what Councilwoman Ruth Luevanos encountered all the time from her adversaries, as well as from some council members. I would hope in the future leaders deal with this issue beforehand so the volunteers to this fine city are not blindsided by an attack due to their political beliefs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lapper, would you mind?
Simi Valley, many years.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to speak on item 8A. I'm not sure whether you want my comments at this time or whether we should wait for the agenda item to come up. No? All right. I'm Dr. Gabino Aguirre. I'm working with the Ventura County Community Foundation on the Census 2020 campaign here in Ventura County. I am a former mayor and councilman in Santa Paula. I am from Santa Paula. So, in fact, I was very, it was interesting that discussion that you just had because we had a similar discussion in Santa Paula when we had to redo our wastewater plant. And at that time, we were facing like $10,000 a day for not meeting the water quality expectations. So anyway, it took me back about 8 or 10 years. But I will tell you that the census figures, which are going to bring federal dollars here to this community. I remember going to Washington as mayor of Santa Paula and actually meeting with some legislators, some Congress people, to see about helping with our water reclamation project, which is something that I would offer at this time. So I don't think I need to go into Census 101. I understand that the Census Bureau, Zuby, was here a couple of weeks ago, so we don't need to go there, other than to say that, that in order to count approximately 300,000 hard-to-count individuals in Ventura County, then we need $5.8 million. The state allocated to the Ventura County Foundation for Ventura County about $400,000. It allocated to the County of Ventura about $280,000. About $700,000 is what we were playing with. And as a result of some fundraising that we put in place, then we're up to about $2.2 million, which is less than half what it's going to take to count every single individual in Ventura County. So when you really look at an undercount here in this community, then we're looking, as in all communities, we're looking at some big dollars. Just a 5% undercount here in Simi Valley, a population of 125,000, 5% of that is going to generate, or not generate, but means a loss of $12.5 million a year. And that's just with a 5% undercount. The estimate here in the county in the 2010 census was overall about 8%. So $12.5 million per year over a 10-year period, which is the decade, this coming decade, then we're looking at a $125 million loss here in Simi Valley. All of that to say that counting everybody, which is the mission of the Complete Count Committee for Ventura County Counts, counting everybody is really, really important. We feel that this is probably the greatest challenge that we're facing right now here in Ventura County and in other jurisdictions because of the federal dollars that are potentially in play. So, of course, I am in support of participation as listed in the staff report, participation in the Complete Count Committee. The Complete Count Committee right now is composed of about over 200 agencies. Those agencies are subdivided into about 8 committees that includes 0 to 5 children, government services, education, community-based organizations, health and human services, government services, et cetera. So we have a full court press on the census here throughout the county. We want Simi Valley to be a part of that. The $25,000 that is also being recommended in the staff report, of course I would support that, because when you really look at the amount of money that potentially this community could lose, $25,000, although significant at this level, really would go far as helping us really meet our funding expectation. So that $25,000 that you are going to hopefully approve tonight is going to be part of a larger fund, and Simi Valley will probably get 10 times that or more in census dollars. So I think it's a wise decision to support the Complete Count Committee through a participation. We like Eric Chen being on there. He's very on top of it, and we appreciate his participation. And of course, we hope that you approve the $25,000 as well. So I'm open for questions if you'd like.
I'd just like to say thank you for speaking here tonight. And you drove from Santa Paula?
Yes.
That's a commitment, and we appreciate that. And I'd like to say that our city is very much committed to doing the right thing during the census, and we have Eric and I think other staff members assigned to doing just that.
Yes,
we appreciate the Community Foundation for what you're doing and the work that you're doing. And I wish I could remember the lady's name, but we've had her come out and speak also, that comes from the Community Foundation.
Yeah, that would be
Vanessa,
Vanessa Bechtel.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
she's a
Vanessa.
wonderful lady and a great administrator as
But
well.
you bring a great message, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Okay, the next three speakers and last three speakers is Joe Pichowski, Rebecca Albaran, and Victoria Wright.
Mayor Mashburn, members of the council, I'm back up here tonight again. As I said earlier, I am a resident of Simi Valley, Wood Ranch. First thing I want to speak about is the proposed sales tax increase. As I said earlier, the Democrats in Sacramento are doing a great job driving a lot of people out of the state of California. We are not undertaxed. Government's spending too much money. And so as far as the sales tax goes, I've got to strongly oppose the sales tax increase. There's absolutely no reason we should be burdening people who shop and frequent our restaurants and other businesses with even higher taxes. It's ridiculous what's happening with the number of people leaving California. It really, truly is. And to date, Simi Valley has been one of the small bastions, including Thousand Oaks, that have maintained the lowest sales tax rate in the state, which is the minimum of 7.25%. And I urge you to do the same. Leave it where it is. Now I'm going to use the remainder of my time to discuss something that came up at the last council meeting. At approximately the 30-minute mark, Councilwoman Luevanos started talking about how she is harassed. Her words were that she gets harassed every single day. She claimed that she was harassed on Saturday, the previous Saturday, which was the city's 50th anniversary celebration. Now, I was there because I was apparently the person that was harassing her, and I take great exception to that fact, Councilwoman, because all I was doing was sitting there at a table, politely waiting for people to come up and offer their signature for your recall. I did not address you. I did not attack you. I did not say a word to you. Yet somehow, simply being there was apparently harassing to Councilwoman Luevanos. For some reason, she thinks it's okay to post a Facebook video and claim it's free speech. But when other people turn around and use their First Amendment rights to gather signatures outside of City Hall, it's harassment. And that's just wrong. Free speech works both ways, Councilwoman, and you need to learn that. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Mr. Pikowski, would you state where you live, please?
I did.
I'm
Simi
sorry.
Valley Wood Ranch.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Hi, good evening. Why is it so cold in here? Anyways, my name's Rebecca, and I declined to state where I live, but I'm here to address a few things. So first, regarding the 2020 census, I am happy to see the staff report is requesting that the City of Simi Valley contribute $25,000 to the Ventura County 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. I believe that this is a valuable investment in ensuring a complete count for Simi Valley. On the first round of grant requests, we're requesting, there was a grant request for $50,000, so we would in theory be gaining an additional $25,000 in resources. So we're putting in $25,000 into the pot, and then we're requesting $50,000. So we'd be gaining $25,000 in resources there, and that's on the first round of grant requests. So I think that it's a good, valuable investment. Second, in regards to the tax increase, So it's kind of a brief report, but I am in favor of the sales tax increase of 0.5 cent. So based on the report, this would generate $9.7 million to the general fund, which would go to public safety, local hospitals, core services, road repairs, capital projects, and for public jurisdictions. In May 2018, the Budget Advisory Committee presented various solutions in order to address the ongoing and future fiscal constraints faced in the city's general fund. At that time, they had presented various options. One of the ones that was highly debated was an increase in taxes, but at that time, it was a 0.25 cent increase. So, at this point, we've come to a point where we have to increase it even further because we haven't addressed those fiscal constraints. So we need to stop kicking down, the can down the road. And then third, probably the most important thing here is, so October is National Bullying Prevention Month, and I would like to address the leadership on the council. At the last city council meeting, Leanna Brown was found to not be fit because of her comments. There's a lot of, easily you could dig up a lot of things that people have said on social media about anything, really. And people could be found to be unfit for a lot of things. I don't understand, why something really personal that I felt, that Mayor Mashburn had against Leanna Brown was used to disqualify her as a volunteer. This wasn't, I don't think, the first time it happened. It happened before when we talked about immigration. She was the only person that was questioned, and you actually asked her a question and she responded. So I do just want to give that reminder that it is, October is National Bullying Prevention Month. Thank you.
Thank you. I think she's
Victoria Wright, are you still here? Okay, that is the end of public statement cards.
Okay, comments regarding the public statements? Any?
I'll be brief. Unless you wanted to go, Councilwoman Litzner.
Why don't you go ahead?
I want to thank you, Dr. Aguirre, for coming out. Is he still here, or did he leave? In abstention, I will thank him for coming out all the way from Santa Paula. And I realize, and that's why I've been championing the census and working with Eric and working with Brian to make sure we get a complete count, and I will continue to do so. In terms of Mr. Pachowski's comments, I recognize everyone's right to freedom of speech, but even the Supreme Court has recognized there are no absolute rights. Every right has a limit, including the freedom of speech. That's why there are time, place, and manner restrictions that are instituted by the U.S. Supreme Court, and that applies to all of us. And Ms. Alvarado, I want to thank you for coming and speaking and reminding us that the Budget Advisory Committee did recommend a sales tax increase as one of the options, and that we should not, in fact, as you said, kick the can down the road and make sure that we meet our fiscal responsibilities by doing the responsible thing. Thank you.
Well, actually, I wanted to thank all the speakers for sharing their positions, and we listen intently, and we'll certainly keep all of this going forward. And ultimately, I did want to say that I believe all of us are strong proponents of the census and are very appreciative that it's been referenced in several comments, and I know that we are grateful for that interest in the community, and I know that we are supportive of it, and will be doing our part to approve and support. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar. And there is one resolution on the consent calendar this evening that I will read to you. Resolution number 2019-45, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley authorizing application for and receipt of Senate Bill 2, SB 2, Planning Grants Program Funds.
Okay. Anybody want to pull anything?
May I pull items 2 and 3? Just a quick question on each of them.
Sure.
And I would add 5 to that list.
2, 3, and 5. Okay, let's go ahead and ask your questions on 2 and 3.
Okay. Question 2, Chief, just a question regarding the purchase of the new Ford Police Utility Interceptors.
Yes.
Could this purchase have been made using forfeited asset money if we had not budgeted them for this year?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
The way that they normally do the purchasing is because there's only a certain number of companies that even supply it. So it's not something that is normally used for forfeited assets. And I don't believe in the situation where we have the continuing purchase agreements with dealerships that we traditionally use forfeited assets for it. I don't believe it applies for it. But I can get you the specifics on it. I think it's one of those things under purchasing of vehicles and things like that that are used on the regular basis versus like a special vehicle.
Okay.
So in other words, we use the patrol cars and we enter into these cooperative purchasing agreements for patrol cars. But if we bought something like a Bearcat, which was unusual or out of the ordinary, it would be something different. But this is because it's ongoing. But I can get you the specific part in the forfeited assets legislation that would cover that.
Okay, thank you. That was just a quick question on that.
I'll follow up. We're actually purchasing 3 other vehicles with forfeited asset money that are related to exactly the detective in our unit.
There are specific things in the forfeited assets law that list that out, and I just don't have it with me. But
That's okay. I just wanted in general, so.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
So, and I have a question on number 2 as well, and I don't know if this is for you or for Mr. Gabler. I know that these were purchased through a piggyback bid process.
Right.
And I'm very mindful we're not using our local Ford dealer. I guess my question is, if we had chose to put it in open bid, I mean, is there a way that we could support our local dealership in providing these Ford vehicles?
We have found that the local dealers cannot compete with the state of California contracts because they buy. This is through a state of California contract. They buy.
I thought was it Fullerton, or I'm sorry, where did it
Well,
say?
it's through Folsom.
Folsom. I knew it was a full. I'm sorry, Folsom.
It's through Folsom Lake Ford, but the contract was awarded by the state of California, and they buy hundreds of vehicles through this contract. So the local Ford dealers we have found can't compete.
Right.
Okay.
And the specialty order of them makes it more difficult for them to compete as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
I just had a quick question as well.
Yeah.
Moving forward in the future, with climate change and all the wildfires, is there any plan to transition any of the police vehicles, or is it possible to transition them to more climate-friendly CNG or hybrid or something? Because I've missed 2 days of work. We've missed so many days of school. We have people without electricity, because of the wildfires, because of the climate change. So we have to act now, or there won't be a need for police vehicles in the future. So I'm just curious if there is a plan, if there is a grant, and I offer up my services again of grant writing to help you write a grant, Chief. So
we do have hybrid vehicles in the fleet. We use them for detective vehicles, vehicles that aren't under the strain that the regular patrol vehicles are, because they're run sometimes 24 hours a day on different shifts. So the CNG vehicles and the things that we have looked at those before, and they don't work for the police vehicles, the ones that are used as much. But we have transitioned to to hybrid vehicles for detective cars, for admin cars that aren't getting subjected to the use as much as the patrol vehicles. So that's why we haven't really moved towards that direction there, because we've studied it before, and it's not something that is viable for the regular fleet. So. But
the rest, the other vehicles that are.
We've transitioned to some in the other vehicles. We haven't done the entire fleet yet because they're on a schedule. But we do have hybrid vehicles. Yes.
Okay. Great.
So it's been looked at.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, number 3.
You're done, Chief.
All right.
I just, when I read the staff report on item 3, I just wanted to make a comment that it was a very thoughtful gift from a former community member who passed away and left a donation in her estate to our Simi Valley Council on Aging, and I just wanted to recognize that. I just thought
To
that was
recognize
something
Cheryl A.
special.
Talbot for doing that and
Yes,
her
I just,
family. Yes.
I wanted to make sure that that was recognized.
Agreed.
So that's it on that one.
Okay, number 5, Councilmember Litzner.
So here's my question with regards to this one. I understand we're trying to take advantage of grant funds, but if we don't agree with some of the use as outlined, I mean, you basically, if I understand, basically you've put forth, you would like to write a grant for these items, for this amount of money. Do we as a council get to discuss those items, or do you get the grant, you do the planning, come back, and then we have to discuss at that point? I mean, I guess my concern is it's coming to us 2 weeks before the deadline for the grant. So I understand there's a need to move forward, but where does...
Let me, I think I know where you're going. If we are awarded the grant, we will come back to the council with a program of what we see use of the grant money for in terms of what it's studying for the council's approval. If you want to modify that, and at that time, we would study whatever the council finally approves.
But in order to get the grant, you have to tell them what you plan to do with the funds.
In a very general scope, yes. But I think there's enough room within what we've described to be able to adjust it for the council's
So the plan would be,
desires.
if we get the grant at the maximum amount of $315,000 or whatever it was, good luck, which is great, then you would come back and we could discuss the appropriate usage at that point. Before, or would you do it after?
No,
We've already gone to
before.
plan.
We would do it
Before you go to the
before.
planning commission and the plan rewrite, et cetera.
Correct. If we are awarded the grant, we will come back with a scope of what we would be looking to. We would do this through probably consultant fees, and then we would scope it with the city council.
Okay.
And then go out for an RFP for those services.
Okay, thank you.
And, Councilwoman, sir? Are you good? I don't want to interrupt.
I'm good.
Yes, okay.
Do you want the floor?
Yes,
Okay.
if I may, Mayor Mashburn. I just want to commend, Ron and Stratus and Brian, whoever it is that wrote this grant. We have cut staff so much, and this just shows the dedication of our city staff to the residents of the city. I've done grant writing for 21 years as a teacher. It is not extra pay that you get. It is because you love the people that you work for, the people that you serve. So I want to thank you, Stratus. I want to thank Ron. I want to thank Brian. Who else? Eric. Who else was involved? All the people that were involved, all of our staff in writing this grant. This is a labor of love and dedication to the residents of Simi Valley, and this is how much our city staff loves our residents, loves the jobs they do, and are dedicated to serving the needs of our residents. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and for going out of your way to look for this grant money. I know that it is time that we update our zoning ordinances, and for you guys to go above and beyond to write this grant just shows how outstanding our staff is, and I just want to commend you on that, on your dedication. Thank you very much.
Move consent items 1 through 5.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is continued business item 7A, approval of the memorandum of agreement with the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 721, and adoption of a resolution. A reading of the resolution is as follows. Resolution number 2019-44, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley amending and restating the Memorandum of Agreement between the City of Simi Valley and the Service Employees International Union Local 721 and rescinding Resolution Number 2017-40 and all previous resolutions to the extent that they are in conflict herewith. And this evening we have Shannon Nash for the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The item before you is the proposed revisions to the terms and conditions to the Memorandum of Agreement with Service Employees International Union, Local 721. This item was first presented to you on October 14th for the purposes of providing transparency and soliciting public comment prior to the final adoption. Tonight, this item is before you for final adoption. Prior to the beginning of negotiations, the City Council provided policy goals to the city's negotiating team that included addressing increasing pension costs, minimizing long-term costs to the city while recognizing employees' dedication and commitment to the city. Staff has been meeting with SEIU negotiations team since April, and the MOA before you presents the culmination of these discussions. It should be noted that representatives of SEIU 721 worked with the city's negotiating team toward an agreement that would not increase pensionable costs for the city due to the concerns with the uncertainty of future pension obligations. As the City Council has previously presented this agreement, I will now review the critical points of the agreement on the screen. This agreement includes a 2-year agreement with no salary increases during the term of the agreement. And in addition, there are no PERSable increases to the city. There is a Me Too clause, an increase in the annual leave bank from 550 hours to 620 hours, an increase of the annual leave cash out limit from 100 to 160 hours with a floor of 20 hours, another increase in the AL cash limit from 160 to 180 hours, effective the first check in January of 2021, also with the floor of 20 hours. Effective 12/23/19, an increase in annual leave by 0.25 hours for the first check in January of 2020 for all SEIU employees. Effective 6/22/20, another increase of annual leave by an additional 0.5 hours for the first check in July 2020 for all SEIU employees. And effective first check in January 2021, an increase in annual leave by 0.25 hours for all SEIU employees. Under the 457 contributions, the city will make an employer contribution of $20 per pay period without a match being required. The city will match an employee contribution of up to $50 per pay period. In year one, the city will make a one-time $250 contribution to 457 plans for all enrolled SEIU employees. In year two, the city will make a one-time $100 contribution to the 457 plan for all enrolled employees. There will be an increase in promotions from a 5% salary increase to a 5.5% salary increase, which would be consistent with the management unit. There will be an increase of life insurance from $100,000 to $101,000, also consistent with management. There will be an increase of the tuition reimbursement program from $900 a year to $1,600 a year, also consistent with management. And we would be maintaining the 80-20 split for medical coverage. We have secured the ability to supplement the ADA and Dial-A-Ride program with Uber and Lyft, or something similar, for city cost savings and discuss any negotiable impacts. There will be a discussion of negotiable impacts should City Hall decide to close every other Friday and put employees on a 980 schedule. This would include a discussion of how the city pays out city-recognized holidays. Sympathy strikes will not be permitted. Employees who are off for 3 or more days due to illness or injury may be required to provide a doctor's note. This is increased from currently it states 1 day. Patterns of abuse may still be addressed. SEIU employees will be provided 14 days notice of work schedule changes absent emergency circumstances. The annual leave cash out opportunities will be increased from 2 times a year to 4 times a year. Job classifications have been updated in the MOA before you, and the language throughout the MOA was simplified and updated, and obsolete language was removed. The total compensation associated with this agreement in year 1 is up to $198,694, or 0.79%. In year 2, it is up to $312,548, or 1.25%. And the total over contract term of $511,242, or 2.04%. In summary, this agreement before you for consideration is a 2-year agreement with no salary increases and no personal increases to the city. And employees will share in the increased medical costs. It is recommended that the City Council adopt the proposed revisions to the terms and conditions of the MOA with SEIU as presented. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for questions.
I just wanted to say thank you for doing such a great job. You and Sam, I know, did the majority of it, and whoever else on your committee helped. So thank you.
I do have some questions. And yes, thank you for your presentation, Shannon. I want you to explain that none of it is PERSable. I know that I had a question, I think it was answered appropriately, but I'd like to ask it again so it's for the full council. If an employee saves their leave hours and then retires at the end, and they cash out their leave hours at the end, so their last year of employment is much larger, does that cash out, which is higher, affect then their PERSable rate or their retirement rate?
When they cash out at the end, that is not PERSable.
Okay. And I just wanted to confirm that. I want it stated on the record. Explain, just, and again, some of these questions are for people who are watching and for our edification too. You say that there's a Me Too clause. Explain exactly who that would apply to, or what is, how that is constraining.
So the Me Too clause is encapsulated in the term of the MOA. That is where it is located. And the purpose of the Me Too clause is to make sure that any other group that is negotiated with in the next 2 years, because it's a 2-year agreement, that if someone gets more in a percentage of total comp than what this group received,
which was 2.04%,
that they get reconsideration for whatever is over that.
Gotcha. Okay. And just to be clear, this negotiation, and I will tell you that I think if any class of group is worthy of benefit, is the SEIU class, the rank and file. I just want to make that clear. If they, well, in the next 2 years, basically we have to renegotiate separately for management. This does not automatically roll over then to what we are providing beneficially for the management. Is that correct? Or unclassified, I should say, whatever you want.
Unrepresented.
Unrepresented, whatever that term is.
Unrepresented management, close enough.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to make clear that this does not automatically apply to them.
No, it doesn't.
But the Me Too clause, would that?
Potentially. If we negotiated with management within this next 2 years and provided the non-represented group with something more, then it could.
Okay.
And I also want to be clear of the true cost of this, because basically what you put up there is $500,000 is what our cost is to the city. That assumes people max out their cash out in the next 2 years, correct?
It makes the assumption that we go all the way up to the top.
Gotcha.
On all items.
If they don't, let's say no one chooses to cash out and they hold on to it for 5 or 6 years until their salary has increased, the potential cost to the city could be much, much higher, correct?
That's true. The ability to have them be able to cash out more and more often during the year gives them the flexibility to negotiate their cash flow through the year, and it reduces our liability on the books.
I understand right now, but over time, if they choose not to, when they have got a higher rate, it could be very much more expensive for the city. And I want to be sure that we're aware of that, the potential implication of this decision. Okay, I think that's my. By the way, I'm a proponent of good tuition support. I'm just saying, education is great, so just saying.
Any other questions?
Shannon, conversely, if they didn't, because you said it would go up to $198,694 in year one, the cost, and you said up to $312,548, and I'm an English teacher, so I'm always looking at language. So that means it could potentially cost us less, and this relates to what Councilwoman Lister stated, that it could potentially cost us less. So even though if they waited later until they were at a higher salary scale to cash out, we would have the savings from them not cashing out in these next 2 years.
The converse would be true, yes.
Right. So I just wanted to point that out, because you said up to, so it may not cost us $511,000, and that might be a cost savings, and in the future it may cost more, but we would have the savings in these next 2 years if they chose not to do that. But we still have the 80-20, so as healthcare costs rise, it is likely that they will probably use that leave to cover the healthcare costs, because healthcare costs, I don't think anyone is predicting are going to go down anytime soon. So even though it's still an 80-20 split, the cost, that 20% cost, is still going up higher and higher and higher. And I haven't seen any expert say anywhere say that those costs are going down. So it's highly likely that they probably will cash out and have that flexibility to use that towards their healthcare costs. Is that correct?
The healthcare is treated a little bit differently. I can tell you what we've experienced in the last cash out. About 33 people utilized the cash out in July. So not necessarily would they, because we offer the Simi Flex benefit and their health plans are deducted from that benefit, and whatever's left over goes into cash. Or if they owe, then it comes out as a deduction. So taking cash out doesn't help that necessarily unless they're having a big deduction.
Okay. And I just want to commend you for having the equity and moving our employees more toward the equity of being consistent with management. I love seeing that in the MOU. As a teacher in the trenches, it's all, and having, gone on strike in the rain for 7 days, and then seeing it, administrators get the exact same pay raise and not having walked in the rain. I understand what it feels like to be someone in the trenches, and I, commiserate with, our workers and our city workers in the trenches. And what you want more than anything is to be treated with equity and with respect. And I believe this agreement, and I want to thank the entire city council for, and hopefully we will all vote to agree on this MOU. But, it really shows the respect that our city workers deserve for the dedication and the hard work, for the grant writing, for the staying here late. Sometimes they're here till 2 in the morning with us, like you are here late with us, Shannon, and sometimes they're here very early. So I think this shows our city employees that we respect them, that we honor them, and that we are very grateful for the work they do for our residents here in Simi Valley.
Mr. Mayor, move approval of the SEIU MOA.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is new business item 8A, consideration of participation in the Ventura County 2020 Census Complete Count Committee, approval of an agreement with the Ventura County Community Foundation as to form, and authorization for interim city manager to execute the agreement. And Ron Fujiwaki and Eric Chen are both here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and council members. This evening's staff report is going to be provided by Eric Chen, our associate planner, and Eric is also one of our city representatives on census activities throughout the county. Eric?
Mayor Mashburn and city council members. Before you tonight is an overview of the city's efforts toward preparation for the upcoming 2020 census and request to participate in the Ventura County 2020 Census Complete Count Committee Fund. The United States Census Bureau conducts a once-a-decade count to determine how many people and where they reside in the United States. Beginning March of 2020, this count will determine the number of congressional seats, district lines, and distribution of federal funds for programs including health, education, housing, roads and highway, and a host of other critical programs. For each person not counted in the census, it is estimated $20,000 lost in funding per person for the next 10 years. As such, ensuring an accurate count is critical to local funding. On November 16, 2017, the City of Simi Valley accepted the Census Bureau's invitation and authorized staff to participate in the critical decennial count activities, beginning with a local update of census address operation. Partially funded by the Census Bureau, the multi-year operation allows local jurisdictions to add and verify new and missing addresses. The Bureau has verified nearly 100% of the addresses submitted by staff to be included in the census database. Furthermore, staff procured media materials from the Census Bureau at no cost to the city and implemented soft outreach beginning February of 2019. The city's soft outreach included dissemination of census publications such as 2020 Census and Confidentiality and applying for census jobs online, distributed through the local Simi Valley Television, Simi Valley Street Fair, Council on Aging's Wellness Expo, Youth Employment Services Job and Career Expo, and the city's Census 2020 webpage that just went live earlier this month, and more. The Census Bureau is aware of the financial burden imposed on local jurisdictions to conduct the necessary census operations, and therefore recommends partnerships among government agencies and nonprofit entities to avoid duplication in efforts and oversaturated media with census content. The County of Ventura adopted the regional collaboration model to form the Ventura County 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. The committee is composed of 3 co-chairs, a steering committee, and 9 subcommittees, each with its own planning and outreach responsibilities. Anticipating a partnership opportunity, staff has been working with the committee's local government coordination committee since its formation. From the collaboration model, a Complete Count Committee Fund was established with oversight provided by the Ventura County Community Foundation. As of today, the committee fund has received $2.2 million in total contributions and will require another $2 million plus to meet its goal. Contributions from government agencies include $500,000 from the County of Ventura, $100,000 commitment from City of Oxnard, $50,000 from VCTC, and $25,000 from City of Thousand Oaks. The city has been presented with the opportunity to partner with the Complete Count Committee. As a participant of the committee, staff is recommending that the city contribute $25,000 to help the committee leverage the state's matching fund. A partnership with the committee allows the city to take advantage of economies of scale while maintaining influence over outreach within the community, and access to marketing and outreach materials, a volunteer base, translators, and various other resources, including funds to establish web-based census questionnaire action kiosks, providing access for Simi Valley's hard-to-count population. On October 11, 2019, the city submitted a grant application to the committee requesting for a $50,000 grant to establish these 25 web-based census kiosks throughout the city. This grant request is the first of the multiple round funding allocation cycles established by the committee. If the city decides not to participate with the committee, efforts to ensure an accurate count will be paid for directly by the city and could exceed budgeted funds. Therefore, it is recommended that the City Council authorize the city's participation in the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee and approve an agreement with the Ventura County Community Foundation with a not-to-exceed amount of $25,000 as to form, and authorize the interim city manager to execute the agreement. This concludes staff presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councilmember Luevanos,
How did you know, Mayor Mashburn?
because you were ready to speak.
I want to thank you, Eric, for going to all the workshops, and I know Councilwoman Lidster went to one of the workshops as well as at VCCF. And, you know, I know you said it's a cost, and some people see it as a cost, but it's really an investment. You know, Dr. Aguirre said that, you know, the 5%, last time there was an 8% undercount. Even if we have a 5% undercount, we stand to lose $125 million over the next decade. I crunched the numbers. It's a lot of money. And it's not a cost, it's an investment. We're going to get $127 million. If you knew that you could, you know, invest $25,000 and get back $125 million, you would do it in a heartbeat. Anyone would do that. So this really is an investment of us getting our money back that we need for, you know, we talked today about infrastructure and, you know, all the things that we need for our community. So it is a really, really big deal for us to make sure that we get the money for our residents. I saw in the funding, one of them is the local radio stations, and I want to make sure that, you know, somewhere in there we do include, you know, Spanish radio as well, because it is a means for a lot of the Latino community to communicate. My household's the first thing we turn on is the radio in the morning. It's the last thing we listen to at night, and what we listen to in the car. So especially for our, you know, if we have any, especially agricultural workers, anyone who's not literate, who, you know, wouldn't read the newspaper or doesn't have time to, the radio is the best way to outreach. So I want to make sure that's, and I'm glad to see that in the plan. So thank you for thinking of that. I really appreciate it. I don't really have a question, just commendation.
Okay, any questions?
I have a quick question, just a quick question. So if I understand what you just said, we pay $25,000 and we're applying for a $50,000 grant.
And more.
I like it. Okay, I just wanted.
He didn't say you get it.
Oh, I got it. But if we don't apply, if we don't spend the money, we would not be eligible for the potential grant consideration.
Well, this is part of the contribution to enter into the account committee.
Gotcha. And I want to thank Mr. Chen, too. I sat next to him at a census meeting, and he was so informative. He just held my hand and explained it all. So thank you very much.
Move to authorize city's participation in the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee.
Second.
Call for the vote. Good job.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda is new business, item 8B, consideration of and potential action regarding a half-cent transaction tax/district add-on sales tax for the city of Simi Valley. And Linda Swan is here for this presentation.
Julia, can you dim down the lights? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and City Council. During the review of the city's fiscal year 1920 budget, staff was requested by Councilmember Luevanos to provide an estimate of potential revenues affiliated with a half-cent sales tax increase. Staff has worked with the city's revenue and taxation consultant, HDL companies, and is presenting this information to you this evening. The statewide tax is 7.25%. In most areas of California, local jurisdictions have added district taxes, also known as add-on taxes. That increases the tax owed by a seller. District taxes are the voter-approved sales and use taxes imposed by cities or counties that are added to the state's base tax rate of 7.25% to fund important local services. There are 222 city transaction districts and 34 countywide districts in California. A listing of neighboring cities and their sales tax reports have been identified in the staff report. Based on HDL's review of sales transaction tax ratios in other agencies, levying a transaction tax with similar characteristics to Simi Valley, an additional half-cent sales tax increase will result in an estimated $9.7 million to the city. So per California Revenue and Taxation Code, in order for a governing body of any city to levy or increase a transaction and use tax for general purposes, an ordinance proposing the tax must be approved by a 2/3 vote of all members of the governing body, and the tax must be approved by a majority vote of the qualified voters of the city in an election on the issue. So some important facts on how an add-on tax impacts city residents and businesses. I'm utilizing HDL's cartoon presented at a local conference. Purchases shipped or delivered into the city from other places, such as business, medical, industrial supplies, construction materials, and internet purchases are allocated to place of purchase. Purchases shipped out of the city would not be subject to the city's TUT or add-on tax. However, with registered vehicles, an auto, boat, or motorcycle, the consumer pays the sales tax rate that is in place where the vehicle will be registered. So if a Simi Valley resident purchases a car within the city and registers the car utilizing his or her personal address, they would be subject to the base plus the add-on tax. If a non-Simi Valley resident purchases a vehicle here in Simi Valley, the consumer would pay the sales tax rate in the location where the vehicle is registered, likely his or her city residence. So the Budget Advisory Committee investigated a fixed-term sales tax increase as part of the general fund investigation, but recommended that the City Council evaluate all other avenues such as efficiencies, service reductions, and fee increases prior to any consideration of a sales tax increase. The committee also launched a public survey in November of 2017. Of the 740 recipients that completed the survey, 53% of survey takers were not in favor of a 0.25% sales tax increase. So tonight, the following alternatives are available to the City Council. You can receive and file this information regarding the half-cent sales tax increase. You could direct staff to prepare an ordinance to place a half-cent transaction tax add-on sales tax on the November 2020 ballot and have staff return to City Council for consideration. Thereafter, the publication of the staff report, it was revealed that a general tax would have to be placed on the November 2020 election. I believe in the staff report we said March or November 2020. And you can provide staff with other direction. So this concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
Questions of staff? Questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Mashburn. When is the last time that taxes were raised in Simi Valley, or have they ever been raised?
I think the only time sales tax has been adjusted is when the state adjusted their sales tax several years ago and brought it up to 7.75, but it had a sunset date which brought it back down to 7.25.
So you don't, because I was looking for that in here, but I didn't see the year, so you don't know what year that was?
Oh, I think it came down in, let's see, we're in 2016, if I remember correctly, and it was up for about a 5-year period.
So previous to that, the sales tax has the sales tax always been 7.25%?
We the city of Simi Valley has always followed the state sales tax.
Okay, so it's only raised it when the state has raised it?
That's correct. We've never had an add-on.
Okay. And what are our budget projections? Because this would bring $9.7 million of revenue to the city. So we can't, make a decision without looking at, how this would impact us fiscally. Are we going to be fiscally solvent in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
Well, we certainly believe we will. If this were to go to the voters in November of 2020, we would not see any collections until well into 21-22 fiscal year. So it's at least a year and a half out before the city would actually see any collections on it. Yeah, so.
And the revenue assumptions that have been built into our budget are based on the same sales tax revenues that we're collecting now at the same rate?
Yes.
But if we had a recession, if the budget had a downturn, then those revenues would be a shortfall.
If there were a recession, I would expect that we would receive less money in sales tax revenue over the term of the recession.
So if we had a turn, an economic downturn, and people, decide they just couldn't afford it, we would have budget shortfalls.
We would certainly have to make budget adjustments to accommodate any reduction in sales tax revenue.
Have we done all the things that the Budget Advisory Committee has asked? Because every time, we've had staff reports, it seems like we have. Like we have already, looked at efficiencies. Like we have had service reductions. I know that we've cut staff. I know that we've, not given pay increases. So have we followed through on most, if not all, with the exception of this sales tax increase, of the recommendations from the Budget Advisory Committee?
Yes, the Budget Advisory, the only things that we have followed through on, the Budget Advisory Committee, among the other revenue enhancements, they looked at perhaps increasing the transit occupancy tax. However, the council at the time, when they considered the recommendations from the Budget Advisory Committee, did not want to increase that tax. We certainly could revisit that for the 2020 November election. There was one issue regarding other agency uses of the shooting range that could generate additional revenue. That's still an analysis that needs to be done in terms of what the costs are to allow that to happen, as well as any, for lack of a better term, bankable revenue that could come in as a result of it. I believe
Business tax. There was
and
accounts
an
at the time.
increase of the city's business tax receipts, which was not well received by the council either. Other than that, we've addressed all the other issues on the Budget Advisory Committee.
So this would align with the Budget Advisory Committee recommendations, because we've looked at all the other avenues to actually look at and examine. And just for the record, if City Council voted to put this on the ballot, it's not up to us. We're just putting it on the ballot. The voters will decide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, I know that I looked at the report and it said 740 recipients responded. I asked tons of people. I've lived here for 18 years, almost 19 years, and I told my husband, do you remember seeing this? Do you remember this survey? Do you remember? I remember when I first got elected almost a year ago, seeing the results of that survey and reading all the comments, but I don't ever remember getting that survey. And I have come to city council meetings, but I wasn't as active in neighborhood councils. But I know a lot of people did not receive that survey or did not respond to that survey. And of the 127,000 residents, 740 recipients is less. It's less than 0.5% of the residents. So that it's not an accurate or reflection of all the residents and the opinion here of the residents when you have less than 1%. It's not even a statistically significant number to only have 740 residents that responded. And even of the 740 that responded, 47% were in favor of a 0.25% sales tax increase. So it's interesting that even having the public comments here, we had, half of the two people who commented on the sales tax, half who said they were in favor and half who said they were opposed. So it would be, it would not be us deciding as a city council. It would be us allowing the voters to decide, right, as we put on the ballot?
That's correct.
Okay. And what could this money go towards? As we face inflation, as we face rising pension costs, what could this half a percent, or even if we did 1/4% of a sales tax increase, what would that cover?
If it was going to the ballot for general use purposes, it would require a 50% plus one vote of the voters. Could be used for police services, streets and roads, facilities, general city purposes. So
public safety.
It certainly could be used for public safety.
Okay, infrastructure.
Yes.
Public transportation.
Yes.
Senior services.
Yes.
Youth services.
Yes.
So it would benefit the entire community.
You could say that.
Okay.
Move to receive the information provided by staff.
Before we vote on that, move and second it, I would like to just I would like the floor if possible, Mr. Mayor, if I could say a couple of things. And a question to start with. As I looked at the report, am I understanding correctly that all of our immediately neighboring Ventura County districts, Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, Westlake, they are all at 7.25%? None of them have raised above 7.25%.
Yeah, Oxnard is at 7.75, Ventura is at 7.75.
So as
the
we go
rest of us
further
are-
west, but even Camarillo is
Yes, 7.25.
So the ones that are closest to 7.25%. Obviously, if we go into LA County, that is a whole other story.
Just trying to give a perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to go on the record, actually, to say that I feel like I need to represent the taxpayers and small businesses. My concern, Councilmember Levinos, just so you're well, that, and one thing I learned from this report, I will say, is I don't think I really thought about purchasing vehicles, and that I didn't quite understand that it is where you register necessarily, that is the amount of sales tax. And I think I'm not alone with that understanding. And I worry that if we were to raise the sales tax, people would choose to go purchase their automobiles in Thousand Oaks and other places where there are lower sales tax. The perception is that they'd be getting a better deal, even though they might come back and register it here. I don't want to potentially impinge on our small businesses that way, and taxpayers as well, and I don't want to drive people out of our community into their neighboring communities because we've raised our tax rate. So I would support moving to file this and appreciate the information because it's very helpful. But those are just my reservations. I just felt I had to express them.
Well, I'd like to point out something in the report that, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mayor Mashburn. May I have, Councilwoman Litzer, if I may respond. In the report, it has Westlake Village, LA County, and then Westlake Village, Ventura County. There is no, Westlake Village. There's Westlake Village and there's Westlake. But it's considered by the county, it's considered, Westlake and then Westlake Village. So, the way that it's named, but Westlake Village is 9.5%. And, we have a lot of people that go shopping in Westlake Village because they have the infrastructure, they have the higher end stores. So even though the sales tax is more, a lot of people who go shopping in neighboring Los Angeles at 9.5%. So it's not a matter of people looking at the sales tax and deciding, I'm not going to shop, I'm going to go shop in Simi Valley because the sales tax is lower. It's a matter of what do you have available there. And the people who are spending money on, items, on consumer goods, and I saw that was a large percentage of, the revenues that would be generated, are going to places where there are higher taxes, irrelevant of the fact that they are higher taxes because they have the infrastructure and the amenities that those people are looking for. When I go and grade papers, and I need to go shopping and buy something for my daughter. I mean, we have Halloween, season that's coming up and the fall season. And as people are buying winter clothes and Halloween costumes, I would love to shop for stuff here in Simi Valley, but it's just not here. And that's what I keep hearing from residents over and over again. The things that we're looking for, we cannot buy here in Simi Valley. So we have to go somewhere else. We have to go to Westlake. We have to go to Ventura. We have to go to Oxnard. We have to go to Topanga Plaza, because the things we're looking for to buy here, as much as we would want to invest more here, and pay that lower tax, we can't do so because it's not available here. So I end up going as a teacher, as a mother, going elsewhere where the tax rate is higher. So it's not a matter of whether or not the tax rate is lower, it's a matter of whether or not they have the things available that I need. And where you have the infrastructure that is there because they have a higher tax rate and they have those amenities available and transportation and, better shopping and better investment in their communities, that's where you see that growth. So again, this is just like the census, an investment of our money, of our sales tax money, to go into that infrastructure, to have, the underground wiring, to have the telecommunications, to have the Wi-Fi, corridors in our city that would attract businesses, that would support our small businesses so that they could do better. And so that's what they're looking for, and that's what would help our economy grow. And that would also attract, our millennials, our younger families that have more disposable income to spend and invest in our community. And that's what I see this as, an investment.
Mr. Mayor, call for the question.
I'd like to make a statement if we,
I would too.
okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of my concerns would be, I would not want to put this out there without doing some community outreach in the first place. It was done a couple years ago. Like Councilmember Luevno said, only 744 people responded. So I would like, if before I were to do anything and vote on this other than for information, I would want a little bit more input from our community as a whole. I'm also concerned about our businesses because they're going to be taxed on anything that they bring in to their business. So if they're ordering supplies, if they're ordering things for resale, they're going to be taxed, that extra tax on what they bring in, but when they sell it to somebody outside of Simi Valley, we're not going to get the extra tax. So it's almost like we could be hurting our businesses. So I would need to look at that a little bit further and see what type of thing that would do. Those are really my two comments on that.
Okay. My comments are, I've had 4 retail businesses here in Simi Valley over the years. There's nothing that would hurt my business more than raising taxes. Absolutely the worst thing that could happen, and I think that's shown by the number of businesses that are struggling, number of restaurants that are struggling, and the sheer numbers of people leaving this state. It's a privilege to pay taxes. What's wrong with this state is the way the taxes are spent. We are a good location that's doing a good job with our revenues and trying to do a good job. Raising taxes becomes part of the overall problem, and we might as well just send people away. And the car dealers are struggling, and they want to keep the folks that are here in Simi Valley buying the vehicles here in Simi Valley. And I think the number was something like 80% of the people leave the valley to buy their cars. Raising taxes here will just add to that problem. Yes, it wasn't an auto dealership, but it was a new vehicle dealership that we had, and that was one of the great advantages we had, is having the 7.25% sales tax. So I don't like raising taxes. I think it's the wrong way to go. So I would hope that someone that would second council member, I'd like someone to second council member Judge's
Mashburn,
office.
If I may respond to and agree with Councilwoman Kavanaugh.
Sure.
I agree with Councilwoman Kavanaugh completely. I think we should send this to the neighborhood councils and see if sentiments have changed or if they've stayed the same, but at least give the community the opportunity to give feedback on this and send it to the neighborhood councils for input and feedback.
Okay, that's fine. We can. That's what I think we do by.
Is that a secondary motion?
I'll second.
Second.
I'm sorry, does that, so my question is, by doing this motion, does that just file it for information in our library, or does that send it to
the neighborhood councils. I'm not
If the
following.
secondary motion succeeds, it sends it to the neighborhood council.
If the secondary motion, so has Councilmember Lovenos made a motion, and who second? And
Do we even need to make a motion? Can we ask the city manager to see to it that that goes to the neighborhood councils?
What we can do is we can send it to the neighborhood councils and then provide a memo to council boxes regarding the results.
You can, excuse me, you can send it just the way we received it then.
We can send this staff report to the, just like this, to the neighborhood councils, ask for their opinion, and we can provide a memo to council boxes regarding what comes back.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
So if I may clarify, Mr. Mayor, the motion is to receive and file?
Correct.
And to send to the neighborhood councils.
That's not part of the motion. We just discussed that on the
Okay.
side.
But it will be sent. Okay.
Okay, and who seconded
Okay,
that?
are we ready now?
Dee Dee seconded.
She needs a second on the
Councilwoman.
primary motion.
Do you second it?
I,
She seconded the
Councilwoman
secondary
Kavanaugh.
motion.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion passes unanimously to receive and file the staff report. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 9A, City Council member reports.
Okay, Councilmember Litzner.
This was a fun 2 weeks. Thank you for the opportunity to report. On Tuesday, October the 15th, I joined Mayor Keith Mashburn in receiving a commendation from our supervisor, Bob Huber, at the Board of Supervisors Council Chambers, where they commended us for 50 years as a city, and it was, they were very appreciative of us being a city, and it was a good opportunity to be there with Mr. Gabler as well. On Wednesday, October the 16th, I attended the 25th anniversary of Nancy Reagan Breast Center, Aspen Surgery Center. More truthfully, I played the harp for that event, and I actually want to commend our Adventist Hospital for their plus 50 years of involvement in the community. And this particular center, I understand, Nancy Reagan lent her name to it, which is makes it very esteemed, and they're doing great things. And so I just want to commend them for their gathering and open house for the community. It was just very nicely done. On Thursday, October the 17th, I represented the city at the next City Council at the Simi Valley Ed Foundation Teacher of the Month, which was at Sinaloa Middle School, where Katie Johnson was honored. She's a special education teacher there at Sinaloa Middle School, and I think she was truly surprised and quite overwhelmed with the honor, but appreciate our educators in Simi Valley. We have some great teachers. It was the day for middle school because that evening I spent the evening at Valley View Middle School, where I accompanied the orchestra for their performance, and hats off to Mr. Mitch Schuster, who has such an incredible program there. Friday, October the 18th, I attended the Simi Valley Ed Foundation board meeting in the morning. Just should say that they are starting to review all the grants that they do for our schools and teachers, and so I appreciate what they do. On Sunday, October the 20th, attended the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i of Simi Valley, bicentennial celebration of the birth of Bob. I may be saying that incorrectly, but 200 years. He was the founder very much of their faith, and I know that Councilmember Mike Judge and Councilmember Lebanos were both there. It was just a very lovely production, and so grateful for their faith in our community. On Tuesday, October the 22nd, had the opportunity of touring the Hangman products, the manufacturer here in Simi Valley, and it was being kind of sponsored by Walmart. They are here in our fair city and providing 3 products for Walmart throughout the country, and it was just fascinating to be there with Mayor Keith Mashburn and Mr. Gabler. I understand Mike Judge maybe went later, but it was it was very interesting to see the products that they create here in our town, and I will tell you, the little stud finder I acquired, I used that night. But they manufacture many products, but 3 of which are in Walmart. That evening, attended the Power and Impact of Opioids, hosted by the DEA and Simi Valley Police Department. Thank you, Simi Valley Police Department, for that sponsorship and involvement. I know we had hundreds of people in attendance, and I know the mayor was there, as well as Councilmember Kavanaugh. And I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh. You're absolutely right. I apologize. I will.
It just rolled off the tongue. I know.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh was there. But thank you to Fred Thomas also, who was with the DA, and for his efforts in putting that together. That it is a problem in our community that is not going away, and awareness is probably the first thing, but some of the I think that we need to have more task force, more awareness, involvement, because truly it affects, I think, everyone in our community in some capacity. Thursday, October 24th, I want to acknowledge that I met with our interim city manager, Mr. Gabler. I've never done that from this pulpit, but every 2 weeks I have that distinction, and I want to thank him for his time and effort. Last couple things, October 25th, I had the opportunity to speak at Royal High School for their Brown Bag Luncheon. It was a great experience. Thank you for Mr. Brian Dennert for coordinating that, and great students who asked great questions. And I am hoping that from that we might have some improvement. There was a question about busing, and I'm looking forward to how that question gets resolved. But these were engaged students that really want to make a difference in our community, and it was great to be part of that. And I will just conclude by saying I stopped by the Senior Arts and Crafts Fair at the Senior Center, and it was dangerous to my pocketbook. But it was a great production. That's my report. Thank you.
Councilmember Lou Evanos.
Thank you, Mayor Mashburn. On Tuesday, October 15th, I attended the Youth Council meeting and found out about all the things that they're planning for the Youth Council Summit, their core priorities for the year, including mental health issues, which I will ask for on a new agenda item, because it seems to be a theme in our community that we really need to address mental health issues from our youth all the way to impacting our police department and the services that are provided by a number of entities, the government and nonprofit entities in our community. So, it's definitely impacting our youth. And I also, after that, I went to the Neighborhood Council meeting number 4. There were not a lot of us, but we were all there and discussing a number of issues. We said goodbye to some of the people that got recognition certificates here, and we'll see the new ones, the new Neighborhood Council members at our next Neighborhood Council meeting number 4. On Wednesday, October 16th, I attended the annual League of California Cities Conference in Long Beach. It was a long day. I left very early. I got home very late. But there were a lot of wonderful sessions there. The keynote speaker was outstanding in terms of talking about where our future is with regard to millennials, making up, near half of our workforce in the next 5 years, and how that's going to impact us as cities, and how we need to move forward and progress in addressing the needs of the millennials to make sure that we progress as a city, and how other cities have done that. So it was really informative, and I saw a lot of, other city staff there, which was nice for us to all get professional development. I saw Councilmember Judge there as well, getting professional development as well at the California League of Cities. On Saturday, October 19th, along with Councilmember Judge and Mayor Mashburn, I attended the Relay for Life kickoff. It is a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, and it was nice to be there and feel the support of other cancer survivors. And I always, let people know who, if they have children or family members that have cancer, that is where you find the support and love. One of the many, many Simi Valley families and layers of support that you find is at the Relay for Life, which I really enjoyed. I went back Sunday, October 20th at 2 in the morning, if you can believe that, to walk with one of my friend's teams from 2 to 4 in the morning. She didn't believe I'd be there, but I actually got up at 1:30, put on my sweats, and went and walked with her for 2 hours at 2 in the morning. And it went by like that, really fast. So it's a relay. So you just walk around in circles and you talk. Later that day, I attended also the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i It's a 200-year anniversary of their founder, like Councilwoman Lister said, at the Simi Valley Senior Center. They don't have a physical home, so they meet in different places, so it was nice that they were able to have that event at the Senior Center. On Wednesday, October 23rd, I had my weekly meeting with City Manager Brian Gabler, and we discussed actually many of the topics that were on the topics that would be on the agenda for tonight. So he let me know what was going to be on the agenda for tonight. On Thursday, October 24th, I had my weekly meeting with Lonnie Eldridge and talked about legal implications of issues that are impacting the city and the community. Another one of which I will bring up for a new agenda item. On Friday, October 25th, I was invited to the Mandir, which is the Hindu temple here in Simi Valley, for the first of 5 nights of the Diwali Festival of Lights. So it's still going on. So if you want to go to the Simi Valley Indian Community Center at the corner of Royal and Erringer, they're having stuff every night, I think for the next couple of nights. So it is one of their biggest celebrations. It's a festival of lights. There's food. There's community, there's dancing, there's Bollywood Zumba. If you've never tried it, you want to burn some calories. It's really, really fun. So it was nice to be invited and nice to see such diversity in our community. On Saturday, October 26th, the Rotary Club was having the best deal on a $5 pancake breakfast for $5, all the pancakes and bacon and orange juice that you could have. So we went and partook of the deal. And met some of our seniors, learned some more history of our community through our seniors, our wonderful seniors who are such a wealth of information. And then I, too, did some damage to my pocketbook at the Council of Aging Arts and Crafts Fair. But it was really fun. And we have a lot of talented seniors here in the community, from sewing to jewelry to embroidery. It was just phenomenal. So, and I got some holiday shopping done as well. And on Sunday, October 27th, yesterday, I attended the Simi Valley Historical Society Day of the Dead celebration at Strathern Historical Park. And I've gone for several years now, and I see the ballet folklorico and the Aztec dancers and all the food vendors and the altars to honor those who have fallen. And really, it's paying respect. And it was wonderful to see the Legion there with their own table set up to honor all those who have fallen in the line of duty, offering to the prisoners of war missing in action. And it was really nice to see the Aztec dancers go and pay homage and respect to all those that we remember who have passed on before us. So it's a wonderful expression of diverse cultures, honoring our veterans, honoring the history of this community, and it was a wonderful event. And that's my report.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, or wait a minute, Councilmember Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to repeat everything people have said where I've been and stuff, so I'll just talk about the one I was at that nobody really talked about, or one person mentioned. It was the annual conference of the League of California Cities. It was a very big deal. It's always is the end of the year for them, and then they get their committees together. They talk about things they got passed, things they didn't get passed. One of the big takeaways from this meeting, talking to other people from other cities, mayors, council members, city managers, was give us back redevelopment. We can fix a lot of the problems. The state is not. The second big thing was mental health issues. That was the big thing that was going on there. So the League of California Cities is on top of a lot of things. A lot of things that they do say get ignored by the legislature, but that's the way things go in politics. Other than that, my report's pretty short. I did attend Saturday, October 26th, the VFW Steak Night, which is always a good time. Hang out with the veterans, enjoy a steak, talk about stuff in the city when they ask, and it's always fun to be there. That's my report.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, or excuse me, the 16th through the 20th, I was on vacation, so I didn't get a whole lot of city stuff done, but I did have a good time with some girlfriends. We headed out of town for a few days because we're all celebrating a major birthday this year. So.
Which one would that be?
Younger than you. I got that one, huh? I'm going to pay for that.
Somebody said something about bullying tonight.
I'm going to pay for that one. So on October 21st, the mayor and I attended a tri-agency meeting. So it was the Park District, the school district, and the city. It was very, very informative. I think we accomplished quite a bit. One of the big things we did talk about was the census. And the school district has a very good reputation with some of our harder to count residents. And so they are going to take a little bit of a lead in some of that area. So that will be very helpful for all of us. We also talked about public information, how to disperse it even better throughout the three agencies, combining them. So that was really good. And then on Tuesday, October 22nd, along with Councilmember Litzter and the mayor, I attended the Power and Impact of Opioids seminar up at the Ronald Reagan Library. I had been to this 2 years ago, I think, when we had it, and it was good. This one was absolutely fantastic. They had 6 speakers, and each speaker had a different story to tell and a different part of the opioid or addiction epidemic. It was very, very interesting. Judge Enrique Camarena was there. He's the son of Kiki Camarena, the agent that was killed and tortured and killed. And he told his story. And what was really cool was he had an audio recording of President Ronald Reagan calling his mother to offer condolences. There wasn't a dry eye in the place for that one. Our own Officer Collado was there and he spoke. He did a great job, along with some other ones. But it was a wonderful event. I hope we have it again, and they have this quality of speakers. They were very impactful. I did notice a lot of young people there, which was a big positive, a lot of young people. On Saturday, October 26th, I had the privilege of standing in for the mayor at the Moore Park College football game. Our Simi Valley Auto Dealers Council actually sponsored the game that night. So we were the halftime entertainment for about 10 minutes. I had the pleasure of introducing each of them, and they recognized them throughout the game the entire night, and then they threw out T-shirts and had a really good time. But it was good recognition for our auto dealerships, and I hopefully that will help them out a little bit. And today, before our meeting, I met with Mara to review some information. I sit on the Ventura County Animal Commission, and we have an upcoming meeting, and Mara sits on the staff team, and so she wanted to go over some concerns and things that she had found out. Very informative. I'm looking forward to working with her more on that. And then I do have to say one personal thing. Today's my favorite day on earth. I became a grandma this morning, so we have a new resident in Simi Valley. He can't vote for me yet, but I have a new grandson. So
Congratulations.
that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to, several of you mentioned where I was, so I appreciate you doing. No, I do. I very much appreciate you doing that, and I'll skip those and just hit the highlights. The tri-agency meeting that we had, I thought was very good and heading in the right direction, and we'll see more in the future. The opioid, did I say that right? Opioid? Mm-hmm. Opioid. Night, assembly, whatever you want to call it, presentation, I thought was outstanding. And what was the message that I think was very clear is that none of us is exempt from the possibility of having that affect to your life. And a well-diversified group, and the speakers were very diversified and talented. And I want to give a special shout out to Gene Coletto from the Simi PD. He started the program off, did a wonderful job, and I think what they want to get across to everybody is first awareness of the problem. The stats they put out, I don't have a memory of exactly what it was, but it was staggering, the number of families that are affected by this problem. And so I would encourage that we try to do this more and also reach out. I think it would be very impactful to go into the schools and have the students see it, because it's very enlightening, and I think it's something that this community should be very, very much involved in. and getting the word out. Other than that, I just want to warn Dee Dee that the Royal Simi game is coming up. And
I saw the invitation.
I'm surprised they sent you one, but yes.
Well, it's at Simi, so they might not let me on the campus.
I'll try not to.
I think it's at Simi.
But at any rate, that's it for my report. And we're up to 9B, the time of, anybody have anything they want to talk about for future agenda items? Hearing none? Okay, I knew we'd hear one.
Mayor Mashburn, everyone brought up, mental health issues. And I know at one point there was a committee, a community committee, or I don't know what it was exactly, that dealt with mental health issues, because I know I saw it somewhere. And I think I think we're at that point, given the stress and the anxiety that so many of our students are feeling, not just with the wildfires, with the opioid addictions. We do have the highest suicide rate for people under the age of 24 in Ventura County, according to the Ventura County Community Foundation State of the Region report. We do have the highest rate of domestic violence in Ventura County, according to the state, in the state of California. And all the financial burdens that are impacting our youth is what's, leading to the opioid addiction, is what's leading to all these things. And so I think it behooves us as arbiters and being responsible for the health and safety and well-being of our residents to address this issue, to address mental health issues. As a health teacher, it's a burden on me as just a teacher in general in the classroom, dealing with all the stress of all the students and the families and the things that they're dealing with.
Pardon me, Councilmember, sorry for interrupting. On this one,
I'd just like to know if we could have a mental health committee. Sorry. So that's my first request.
Okay, you want to know if there's a health committee,
We
mental
could-
health committee?
I don't know if that's ever, I saw it somewhere in a report somewhere where we had like a mental health, stress, anxiety committee or something like that.
We haven't had it with the city. However, June Ewart does a terrific job with the Community Coalition, where she addresses mental health issues for youth, our youth population, and they are a tremendous resource for parents and people that are dealing with those particular issues. I wouldn't want to duplicate the efforts that she puts together in cooperation with the city of the coalition that's in Camarillo, and there's another coalition in the Oxnard area. So we can provide a memo to council boxes regarding the services that are out there and what Ms. Ewart does in the community. But I wouldn't want to duplicate the efforts that she has.
And I do attend those meetings, and I'm sorry, Mayor Mashburn, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, the free clinic also has mental health services, so it might be of value to contact them and find out what they have in the way of committees, or if there's some teamwork we can do with them.
It just seems like this would be something that would be good. Having been a former juvenile probation officer, the most effective use of resources and assets was having collaboration between the schools, probation officers, mental health counselors, nonprofits. So, we don't have anything like that. The Community Coalition has, and June does a wonderful job, and I have nothing but commendations for her because I do attend those meetings. But those are, nonprofits that work independently. So there's no collaboration between the schools and our police departments and our hospitals that are all being impacted, and our Parks and Rec that are all being impacted by mental health issues. So I think it behooves us to be proactive and try to, prevent people using, drugs or suicide, whatever it is they need to as coping mechanisms to deal with the mental health issues. So in terms of us collaborating and working together across the board, I think it would behoove us to do that. Unfortunately, if you've been to the Community Coalition,
pardon me, Councilwoman, we just have to get it out there what the agenda item might be, and then see if you guys want to put it on there.
And I would just say I would support, I don't know whether it's a committee or just information to see if we should put a committee together. I know just with some of my conversations with emergency room people, et cetera, that there's definitely coordination would be a good thing, so, but maybe a report would be the start.
I think that would be a good idea, to see what is available out there and maybe who could take a lead.
How
and who would be
about-
best to take a lead on it.
I agree, and maybe Elaine and Councilmember Luevanos would reach out to the hospitals and what have you, and then come back and let us know what direction you think it ought to go. Would that be fair?
Sure, that's fine.
Yes.
Because if we agendize it, we're not prepared to talk about it. I would
Well,
think.
pardon me, Mr. Mayor, and this, for 9B, it would be that, I suppose, that the two council members would come back on an agenda item and report their findings.
Yes, yeah, I agree, but first give you the opportunity to go do that. So is that fair enough? We'll start out as a committee and then come back for the agenda item? Okay.
Okay. I do have a different agenda item I'd like to place. I'm very mindful of recent development that was approved, the Planning Commission. I think we need to look at single SRO, single residency occupancy ordinances, so that we have some control over size, over height, over. Anyway, I just think we don't have anything on the books that says that this meets what SRO is, or this is how it's restricted in our city, and I just think that it behooves us to be proactive and responsible so that we have responsible, positive development.
I agree. I read the report, and I think that is something that we need to look at. I don't know if staff had already had something in mind.
That thought process has already started, yeah. So we'll bring something back.
So it'll come on to an agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one more, and I'm not sure if this is an agenda item or not, but I saw that our neighboring city and other cities across the state, because of legislation from Sacramento with regard to rent increases, several cities have passed ordinances protecting renters because there are a number of landlords that are hiking rents up. And I've heard a couple of people that have told me here in the city as well that they're very concerned, or their rents are already going up. So there's a lot of landlords that are throughout the state that are increasing rents very quickly before the January 1st deadline of the new California legislation that limits the rent increases. And I didn't know if that was something that the city council wanted to consider, or that we could have a staff report to protect our renters. I would hate to add to the homelessness issue that we are already facing in the city. So I'm not sure if that's an agenda item or not.
Comments? Follow-up?
It can only be discussed here if it might be an agenda item. I guess that's what it comes down to on 9B.
I personally, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I haven't heard any concern in that arena yet. Not to say it won't come.
No, not RENA, just rent increases, because there's legislation that limits.
Are you asking us to agendize rent control? Is that what you're asking? I just want to understand.
No, to protect renters from rent increase, like drastic rent increases before the end of the year. Because there are renters that are being pushed out.
I'm just mindful, this is the end of October, and I mean, I get whatever the body decides. We could agendize something, but I don't know that it could really go into effect by January 1. That would be meaningful, but maybe, I don't know, if we felt to go that way. But
Yeah, that's a good point
But
also.
whatever, I mean.
Or even
we're
just to
hearing you.
provide resources for renters so that they know their rights, at least, something.
We have rent control.
We can provide some information to the council on resources that are available.
Okay, and if we could have them bilingual, that would be wonderful.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Tonight, we're going to adjourn in memory of Kay Ballard. Kay is Mark Anflack's mother. Mark, who works in environmental services. Also, we're going to adjourn in memory of El Dorado County Deputy Sheriff Brian Ishmael. And we're going to adjourn in memory of Joshua Alejandro, I'm going to mutilate Alejandro's last name, Santisteban. and Nicholas Guzman. They were involved in the recent traffic accident here on LA Avenue, and also the victims of the shooting in Greenville, Texas. With that, meeting is adjourned.